yesterday we had big three main topics. We looked back at the 2022 network situation in a format moderated by Stephen Moore with an interesting panel as well. We then have an outlook for 2023 and strategic planning, 2 sessions with Razvan, and again a lot of presentations and moderations. I hope you enjoyed also the networking drink at the end of the day. So almost 3/4 of the day. The first session we start with the INM, the NM's digital journey. So we have full the team of the INM program in the room to deliver a presentation, and from the tech department as well to show you what we do as the NM27 legacy, the last legacy delivery. So the INM program is, in our view, an integral part of the new normal with 2 major milestones. You already heard that from Jacopo in his setting scene speech. 29th of November 2024, we start shadow operations, and then 15th of May, full operations of the new EAD, which is the first digital product. And of course, we will tell you, some of you have asked about the new building. All the exteriors is done. We are starting the fitting the interiors, as obviously next year during NM user forum we'll arrange visits. You will see the new ops room, but we intend to operate in autumn next year with the legacy system to also to de-risk our safety case. The first argument will be we moved into a new building with the existing systems, and then the INM products will come in. So I don't want to spend too much time from my side. I want to start the presentation with Sil de Gang, who is the INM program manager, and we'll put the framework and we'll give you the sequence of the session. Sil, please.
Thank you, Tony. Good morning, everyone. Perhaps something to add on the practicalities. We didn't plan any test of the fire alarm today, at least I'm not aware of it. So if the fire alarm goes off, I can confirm you need to evacuate today. Thank you. INM, a digital journey. Indeed, that's the title of this presentation, and I'm really glad to see so many people here in the Europa room. It's again full house, although we have some seats that are not taken yet. Perhaps that's something to do with the Belgian beers yesterday evening, I don't know. But again, a full house here, and from the program team, we are really delighted to share with you the latest updates on this digital journey. I would like to go back to yesterday, where we have basically shown to you a lot of slides, a lot of presentation, a lot of statistics about what we expect traffic will be in the coming years. The increase of the traffic capacity, traffic growth is one of the main reasons and one of the main topics. We basically decided to take a leapfrog from the system landscape we have today to a future system landscape, which is called the INM. Because by 2030, we expect 13.8 million flights a year, and we need to have the technology, the system, to be able to cope with that amount of traffic. Now, when we were designing the INM program a couple of years ago, we were looking at it especially from a technical perspective. You might, and your organizations as well, when you use systems for 15, 20 years or even longer, at a certain moment in time, you are confronted with what we typically call system obsolescence. From a maintainability perspective, in order to evolve those systems, you cannot longer do that in a cost-efficient way. It is simply too costly to future evolve your systems. The technology which you have built up and which you inherit is not able to cope with the latest evolutions. So from a technical perspective, it was quite clear that we needed to do something different. So one of the main reasons why we have basically introduced INM as the replacement for current systems is due to system obsolescence. So we could take a decision and state, today we have 20 servers. It's just a hypothetical example here. Tomorrow I replace those 20 servers by another 20 servers. And then I have basically resolved my system obsolescence. Good. I could cross-check one of my major strategic objectives and I could say, well done, INM program delivered. But then I also listened yesterday to the keynote speeches of our Director General, Raul, and also to Jacopo, and I'm just going to re-quote some of the elements they have mentioned yesterday. So with INM and the underlying technology, we need to transform European aviation. We as Eurocontrol, we need definitely to raise the bar. We need to improve the trajectory to a new reference trajectory, which provide us better predictability and also better flight efficiency. Because at the end, digital transformation is part of the house of aviation. So taking these messages into account, simply replacing the current system one-to-one with a new system will not live up to the challenges and the messages that were brought by our Director General and by the Director Network Management. So we needed to think a bit out of the box and do it differently. So one of the main reasons why INM was also created was not simply to replace the current systems we have, but was also to introduce a transformation to the network. And those are basically the two main reasons and the two main topics we would like to address today in the first part of this presentation. So allow me to show the agenda. It's a bit an unusual agenda. It's not some simple bullet points, because our agenda, it's linked to a timeline. Yesterday, Jacopo mentioned 24-25, we need to deploy our first operational assets as part of that INM program. So in order to get there, it's a huge puzzle, and all the pieces of that puzzle need to come together. It needs to be a logical puzzle. So hence the reason why, after my introduction, I would gladly pass the word to Hatice, who is our release manager, and she will basically elaborate on the functional evolutions that we will introduce as part of our last NM release, NM27. If you look at the bottom, there is the new operational center, because it is an integral part, not of the system obsolescence, but an integral part of the digital transformation. The way how we want to manage the network, and Daniel was referring to it yesterday, that new op center will basically put us in a position to better manage the network. That piece will be discussed and basically will be presented by my colleague Mattis, who is the head of the operational transition unit, and he's also spearheading the operational center program. Now in the middle layer, you see the digital products and the digital platform. Well, basically that is the new software, the new applications that we will introduce as part of the INM program. After Mattis' presentation, I will come back to you and I will present to you how we will basically deploy those digital products operationally and how we closely work with our trusted industrial partners on that one. So the agenda of today, it's a timeline. And this being said, I would like to pass the floor to Hatice, who will basically elaborate on the functional evolutions of the NM27 release. Thank you.
Thank you, Sil. Hello, good morning to everybody. Thank you, Sil. My name is Hatice Tutar. I'm the Eurocontrol release manager. It's a real pleasure for me today to be in front of you and to mention about the key role of NM27 for INM digital journey and to give some insights about NM27. Maybe we can start with the next slide, with the first slide. Okay, sorry, I assume, okay. Now, in the first slide, we would like to mention about what is the role of NM27 in this digital journey. It's very important. The key point is it's providing compliance and also providing many other operational features apart from the CP1. It will secure transition time to INM. It is the key point that we would like to convey to you. Next key point is after NM27.0, until INM transition, there will be only technical releases every 6 months to maintain existing services. It is fully in line with the INM strategical objective to maintain business continuity, and it will help to make a smooth transition to the INM timely. It's a very important point to take away today for NM27. And then I would like to give some insight about the content of NM27.0. It's only a few key deliveries we would like to spot. Yesterday, you already see in network strategical session at the end of the day about strategical project evolutions content. It is linked with this one. Today, we would like to remind you in a nutshell before leaving user forum, what to remember as a key delivery for NM27.0. But it is not a full scope of NM27.0. There are many other key deliveries, and we will guide you in the next slide how to get more information for the detailed scope. Now, I would like to point as a key delivery NMP flow first. In the NMP flow, we have introduced cherry peak regulation support. It is very important for the peak time management, and also we also introduce traffic counts and overall load monitoring dashboards, which will be helpful to manage the traffic and capacity for our FMPs, and many other features that you can see in the release notes. The next key delivery is in NMP flight. In the NMP flight, it's very hard to list the things. It is really moving towards maturity state, since we observed that we onboarded all the aircraft operators to NMP flight, and it's getting lots of user feedback. In this release, we focus mainly on the user feedbacks, our airspace users feedback, and improved usability, and also experimented some new data options that you will see in the release notes with the integration with artificial intelligence. And as a third point, in the airspace management, in advanced flexible use of airspace, the key delivery is we introduced the capability for FMPs to locally manage AUP and RAD restrictions. It will be an important local flexibility that will be practiced and implemented in time. Then it's also worth to mention group rerouting. In the group rerouting, there are significant amount of improvements in rerouting tools and algorithms, and to provide better monitoring for you, and also major changes for our stakeholders, for aircraft operators, to provide more rerouting options that you will see in detail, and it is recently experimented and provided promising results. I will advise to look to the details in the detailed sessions in the next slide. Then occupancy CASA is also worth to mention. Since years we progress in this, we studied occupancy CASA prototype, and now it is available for operational live trials, which will be used in time for operational purposes directly. And last but not the least, first phase of improved operational air traffic IOET has been implemented, so that we can send and receive IOET flight plans. So those are the key deliveries today. I would like you to remember in a nutshell for NM27.0. But please look for the details, for more details to the webinar. Next steps to get more information is I can point mid-March, on 16 March, we have a webinar to see all the details interactively together, and there are many interesting features in the last functional NM release that you can see, and it is mostly satisfying the current needs. And also you will take this week the last updated release notes, and every month at the start of the month you will take another update. So in March and April, you will take the future updates of the release notes with details. So you can refer and scan this document for your interest. And also next week, we are also starting testing of NM27.0. So to experience these features, it will be an opportunity. Mid next week, our OPT platform will be opened so that you can start to practice. Before closing, I can tell you to get more information. You don't need to wait. Maybe in the break, we can also talk together. And I would like to hand over, as of this point, to my colleague, Matthias, for the new Network Manager Operations Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Hatice. Good morning, everyone. A warm welcome from my side as well. As you see on the slide, small correction, I'm the head of the operations support, not of the transformation. And as Sil mentioned already, I have this small side project creating the new operations center and bringing it into operations, which we're planning to do by end of this year. So without further ado, what the team has achieved is quite impressive, I would say, in terms of time, particularly considering impact on economy, delivery chains post-COVID, and with the war in Ukraine. This formed a major challenge to deliver that project in time. Now, why are we pressing so much? As indicated by Tony in his introduction, what we're trying to do is to de-risk the transition into the new working environment. So usually what is done within ANSPs is that you have the big bang, you have a new operation center, and you have a new system, which forms quite a challenge in terms of training, of transition, and that we wanted to de-risk. So we want to move the operations with the existing systems. A couple of improvements, of course, we will put on top of that. But basically with the existing backbone into the new center, so the people can familiarize with their new working environment. We're making it future-proof, which I will come back later to be ready for the products of INM. And once the people are familiarized, the first products will be coming in, and the people are ready to work with them. So a few seconds of silence. We started the works, giving some facts or figures on the end of August 2021. We've given the company 15 months to build and construct the building. We're having a total surface of around 5,000 square meters in the ops building. It's flexible space, at least partly. We have 1 large and 4 smaller operations rooms. We have 5 meeting rooms, a visitor gallery, a recreation area for operational staff, much more improved than we have today. We're aiming for an eco certification of the level excellent, which is the second highest level under a European scheme, which is called BREEAM. And we're having what is unusual for an operations rooms. It has windows. Normally operations rooms are quite dark and closed because of reflection, because of daylight. We wanted to achieve that people can see outside, but they are properly protected from an ergonomic point of view. So we have decided to go for electrochromic glass. So this is providing also for some state of the art, and that formed a huge challenge in itself. So the construction took place in record time. And for the ease for you, I've put in a couple of slides, which I want to run through now. You will see it takes a couple of seconds, a picture of each month, and it gives you a kind of a time-lapse feeling how fast and rapidly that building was constructed. So this was in August 2021. Okay, the transition is not working. Oh, it does. This was 1 month later, then October, November, December 21. So you see it was growing really rapidly. A lot of the concrete parts, because it's around building, were produced actually on site, step by step. So the logistics behind that with the space we have was really a challenge. You see here the building of the roof. It's super insulated. We have beams of wood of 25 meters each, constructed like a spike of a bicycle, which is supporting itself. And as you see, we will also have a nice terrace on top of it. You saw the solar panels probably. So we're providing with all of that. And the company has been very, very creative, because for the certification, for example, we needed to create a certain amount of electricity with the solar panels. So originally the plan was to have them on the roof of the new building and some of our existing building. To fulfill that, in the course of the project, the company found a better supplier with higher performing panels, so we could generate the same with only panels on the new building. So they have been very reactive and very proactive to make things happen. And so we made a good decision with that partner because they really tried to make that happen together. Not to forget, of course, the architect and the engineering offices that supported all of that. Now, more interesting how it's going to be looking inside. As you have seen, it's a round building, which forms a couple of challenges. To meet that timeline, we have done this project probably upside down, you could say. So there was first a building designed, and then we started to capture the requirements actually for the operational part. High level, we knew them, of course, before. But then we had to work on the interior design and layout, and then all the ergonomic and functional requirements kick in, and they're usually contradicting each other. So suddenly that big space becomes quite narrow if you want to fulfill everything to the part you need. But we got there. So one of the ideas was, you will see here, this is a ground floor scape. So you see on the right marked, this will be the NMOC room. What we're aiming for, and you can see that already in the design and the layout, what we're aiming for, in contrary what we have today, we have functions in the existing ops room. Some of you may have seen that already. And the people have to work on dedicated desks for certain functions. What we wanted to achieve to be ready for the future is that the people can do anything from any of the consoles. So that means all the consoles will be like each other, same number of screens, the same design. And what we're planning to do, and we're busy with that at the moment, we're putting a virtualization layer on top of our backbone. And that means, and that was one of my demands, to say, I want a clean desk policy. I don't want any big computers under the desks. So what we're having here in this layout is we have two thin clients in the desks, one for operations, one for non-operations contact. These are boxes like you know from your home, the Wi-Fi boxes. They're not bigger than that. And whatever in the future then comes from I&M, we can push it through that pipeline. We don't need to change the technology in the ops room itself. So we're ready for the future, but we can support the as-is as well. Moving a little bit on, you see these two walls downstairs are retractable, so we can actually open that space, so we are flexible in space, whatever comes in the future. Behind that, you see on the left downside, we're putting the front-end IT support, first and second level support together, just beside the operations room. So here all our systems and backbones are monitored and worked on if needed. We're putting the operations training one room in there, same consoles. So it's always familiar for the operational staff. Then we have some meeting rooms downstairs, two small ones, one just reserved for the NMOC, one is a flex one for the staff working there. And at the end, we have a larger meeting room. These larger meeting rooms, and you will see that on the next level, we're also using in crisis situations as crisis rooms, if need be. Then we have some support services, partly from my unit, which is, for example, the roster office. The training experts will be sitting there. On the other side, which is from my colleague, Chris Peregrine, the post-operational analysis team will be sitting there. So we're putting the main functions together that they have short ways and can interact. Then we go into the next floor. You see it is like a veranda. So the main operations room is 8 meters high to the roof. Here we are placing on the downside, we're placing the user acceptance testing team. It's the current system acceptance team, which is converting to the user acceptance testing team, supporting the I&M. As there will be a lot of interaction between them and the operations staff, we thought it would be beneficial if they're in the same building. And here on the other side, something which we're doing in the current ops room are pre-validations. For example, with FMPs or with airline operators, we're doing pre-validations of system changes in the ops room, which can be quite noisy. So we decided to create an extra room for that to keep the noise outside the operational room, but have it close as well. Then you see here, we have quite a large visitor gallery with a window towards the ops room. You can probably see when you look at the right side, there will be very large screens on the wall of the operation center, each of them more than 15 square meters, LED technology, where we can display dynamic information, which is useful for the operational staff, but also for visitors, of course. We had a very good input from one of our operations managers saying, well, why don't you put a console actually in the visitors gallery so we can demonstrate the systems in the gallery and there's no need for people to go directly into the ops room and disturb the operations, which was a great idea, and we're going to do that. The two meeting rooms, which also will be crisis rooms, as I said, they are separated, but they can be combined into one room. Also, there is a retractable wall, so we have flexibility in the usage of that space. Here in the back, there will be a coffee bar, which is a very nice one. We are also putting a dedicated room for the self-briefing of staff, which is very common with ANSPs as well. So here you see is one of the entrances on the first floor. This is usually the way we anticipate that staff will take from the garage. So first thing they do, they come into the building, they do their self-briefing, then they put their stuff in the lockers and go into the operations room. So they will be properly briefed before they take up their duties. This is then coming to the recreation area for the shift staff. So we have a nice little terrace on the outside. Here is the lounge area with kitchen, with the coffee bar. We'll put a kicker in for relaxation. And then left and right, we have our enhanced rest facilities. So we created a new abbreviation, which is called EARTH. So these are the enhanced rest facilities with some sleeping and recreation rooms, showers, and so forth, whatever is needed for the staff. So that finalizes the interior layout of the building. We're starting the equipage of the building this month. Also there, we have a very tight planning. We want to be ready with all the technical installations by end of April this year, including the IT installations. Then we take a full month of testing. And it is the aim that by beginning of June, technically speaking, the building would be ready to go into live operations. Then we use that period over the summer for actually familiarization of the staff. So the different services, the operational services, we have created quite a number of familiarization packages. Some will be with videos. There is no specific training as such required. As I said, we're going in with the existing system, so there's no training on the systems needed. But of course, the desks are a little bit different. The number of screens is different. Working with the thin clients is a bit different. So we need to familiarize them how to work there properly. You see this line is a little bit broken because we're in the summer period. And as you heard before, the summer will become very challenging. So we will adjust the familiarization depending on the workload of the people. But we have enough time for that. We're preparing then the transition, and at the moment the date is set for the night of the 30th to the 31st of October to go live into operations from the new operations center. If all works out like that, we can do it in one night shift. Of course, we will enforce a little bit the teams. We will keep the existing ops center on hot standby for at least 2 months, maybe 3, so we can fall back if anything goes wrong. We don't think we will need it, but just to be sure, we're preparing that. And alongside, we're building these safety arguments for the transition itself. We have an assurance argument for the building, which is almost complete. We have agreed with EASA on how to follow up so they can certify that we can use that new building for the operations uninterrupted and provide our services without actually someone outside noticing it. So, of course, communication is part of that. So we have a lot of communications with staff. Also, this is a part of the communication informing you on what we're planning to do. And that's the plan. Very ambitious. We're on target at the moment, which doesn't mean it would be easy. I'm working in crisis mode with the team since 2 years now, but we're getting there. And I think everybody is quite proud on what we have achieved. So that concludes a little bit the introduction. And I'll pass back to my colleague Seal for the next round. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I know, Stephen, that was for Mattis. I know. No. Jokes aside, thank you very much, Hatice and Mattis. And I think it was nice to see how basically those pieces of the puzzle have been basically put there in order to prepare for INM, for the software pieces that will come with INM. And we all know that the proof of that pudding is in the eating. So allow me to share the challenges that software program and the INM program has, but also the necessary steps we have taken in order to secure to the maximum extent the 2 dates that were communicated earlier by Jacopo. So I'm not going to give you a history course. That's not the aim of this slide, but I would like to go back to February 22, when we basically launched the call for tender for the software part of INM. And the reason why I would like to go back to February 2020 is, you know, that in March 2020, there was COVID popping up, which did not really help us during the tendering phase. But again, also there, we took the necessary steps to secure that we could contract our industry partners on time. Now, it was what I would potentially state an atypical call for tender if we look at the ATM business, because what we often see is that we take a couple of years to draft requirements, and we publish those requirements as part of a call for tender, and we ask industry to come back and to provide us with a solution. Now with INM, we did it differently. We gave a problem to industry, a problem statement, and we contracted a capacity to provide a solution. So the difference between buying a solution or buying a capacity of a solution is obviously that you can reduce the timeline for your tendering phase, but also reduce the timeline in the total program process, because you don't elaborate a lot on the requirements in the beginning, but you also need to put necessary mechanisms in place to do that requirement phase along the program implementation. Now, when we were launching the call for tender, we obviously looked at other industry sectors, and we looked at what they are doing in terms of transforming their IT systems, their software systems. And a kind of a red line throughout our journey in discovering what other industries are doing was basically modern architecture is built on what we typically call a platform, a digital platform. Now, in order to secure the aggressive timeline that was set by our management, we decided to start initial development on that platform rather early in the process. So we took one of our legacy suppliers and we asked them to basically start building the initial capabilities, common capabilities that you will always find in such a platform, in order to secure we would have a platform, an initial version of that platform at the initial stages of the software development of the program. Again, I said that it was a challenging timeline, and COVID was not always helping. I hope you do understand that typically in those call for tenders, you would like to engage as much as possible with potential new suppliers. You would also like to do reference visits to look at how they work with other clients. Well, I think we have optimized the usage of Teams during that period, so we could secure in July 21 two main contracts. So we have one contract with our industry partner Indra, who is responsible for the software development, and also as of last year is responsible to further evolve the initial version of that digital platform to their needs, to how they see what the platform should provide to the application layer. And we have contracted another lot, the lot 2, which is a consortium of Atos and Kronos, so two big IT companies, and they are responsible to test and integrate the software, but also to provide the necessary, if needed, advisory services for EUROCONTROL. Now, once we started that contract and the execution of the contract, as mentioned before, we didn't buy a solution. So I could not go and ask Indra, start developing, because the solution was not there yet. We had initial ideas, which we contracted, initial orders, to basically see how are we going to work with that industry partner. But the first steps we took is we basically locked our industry partners and our colleagues, we locked them up into meeting rooms, and we asked them, today we have a system landscape. Well, how is that system landscape going to look like once we have transitioned to INM? And this is what we call the integrated roadmap. It gives also a business view on how the different functionalities of the applications will evolve in a stepped approach towards the full INM delivery. Now, once you have such a roadmap, you cannot build a full plan yet. It's a high-level roadmap. So we needed to basically use the ways how we worked with industry during the initial orders. And I would like to come back to how we work with our industry partners, because it is also part of that digital transformation. Today, if you look at how we managed to functionally evolve the systems as part of the NM release, it was EUROCONTROL basically developing the software. So we have a software factory in-house, and we provide the functionalities to our stakeholders. With INM, it's different. It's our industry partner, Indra, who will basically develop the software for EUROCONTROL. So it's not EUROCONTROL anymore that develops the software. We trust our industry partners to do that for us. Taking into account those ways of working and taking into account the huge work of the architectural teams that was done after we have drafted the integrated roadmap, we could basically secure a plan for the initial operational deliverables in 24-25, which we have basically drafted into what we called the master program plan. Yeah? So these were the different steps we have taken from a more software perspective in order to get to a plan which is basically leading to the initial operational deployments in 24-25. Now, again, as Jacopo likes to show this slide, I thought I'm going to reuse it just to make it clear that it's a very aggressive timeline. And as Matthijs already stated, this is not going to be an easy one. And we fully acknowledge that one. Also with our industry partners, we are fully aware of the challenges in front of us, because deploying the first operational products in now not 2 years anymore, the time is ticking. It thinks we are around 660 days left, is a true challenge. Now, just to, and I'm not going to enter into too much detail on this one, is that those plans, we have built them. So there are responsibilities for EUROCONTROL, there are responsibilities on the industry side. So the interdependencies between all the activities that we need to do in order to deploy operationally in 24-25, they have been identified, and we are fully working with our industry partners, Indra and Atos, to basically deliver those targets on time. This is for the wave one. You see that there are some initial developments on the flight and the flow domain, but the main focus as part of the initial operational developments is purely the EAD system. But again, what is in for you as a user, for you as business, that will be tackled afterwards by my colleague Ralph. You will see also that we put a bit more pressure on Indra for the second wave, because there is more software that needs to be produced as part of that operational deliverable. You see there that we will also introduce some evolutions on the DMP, the crisis management, and we will basically port our main systems, IFPS and ITFMS, into that new architecture. So we will port them on top of the digital platform. Again, the way how we work with industry, I think we have spent a lot of time at the start of the program to define this one, because it's a brand new way of working. So also internally within the EUROCONTROL teams, this is a huge change. So we have also identified a specific change management trajectory in order to implement the different changes that are needed to get to those new ways of working. At the first stage, EUROCONTROL basically provides the service requirements, and I would like to come back and link it to what was presented yesterday in terms of the different CONOPSes that we are drafting, and also the inputs we are requesting from the operational stakeholders as part of those CONOPSes. Well, without the CONOPS and without the associated service requirements, we cannot ask our industry partner to start the development. So we are really encouraging the operational stakeholders to contribute to a maximum extent to those working groups as part of the CONOPS definition. Now, as mentioned before, we know that EUROCONTROL is not developing the software itself anymore, but we do validate it. So EUROCONTROL remains accountable throughout the whole process, but the responsibility to develop the software lies clearly with our industry partners. And last but not least, on the testing activities, especially when we go to user acceptance testing, and entry into operations. There again, EUROCONTROL, together with our operational stakeholders, will be fully involved again. This being said, I have one slide on that famous digital platform. I'm not going to enter into the technical details. If you would like to do so, feel free to raise any questions you would have during the Q&A session or at the lunch break. We have our technical experts here attending, so they can elaborate much more on the technicalities. But what is important as part of that, part of the digital platform, it's a technical layer, but it will standardize a lot of the capabilities that we today typically are developed in an application, and then they are developed a bit differently in another application. We are going to standardize that as much as possible, also with commercial off-the-shelf software, and that will basically enable us to present common capabilities to the application here. Just for as an example, for instance, the way how we will manage the identity and the access management will be done by the platform, for instance. Now, I think I've spent enough time on planning activities. We have touched upon how we see the software development. We have touched upon some technical elements on the digital platform. So I think it's time that we will share with you our business view. And for that one, I am going to hand over to Ralph, who will basically elaborate much more on that topic. Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. Welcome. And so I will indeed focus my presentation on the business view of INM. INM brings digital transformation at the heart of EUROCONTROL, and it's going to really transform the European ATM in the next years, as our DJ said yesterday. So today, I'll give you a high-level overview of the functional content of the Wave 1, the Wave 2, and even beyond. Then I'll briefly come back on the achievements of the last 12 to 18 months. And finally, I'll zoom on some of the main Wave 2 deliverables. So let's start. So Wave 1, shadow operations for early adopters also, is on 29 November 2024. And it's going to provide the initial IDL, integrated data layer, which we've limited to AES data maintenance features. It will also bring and introduce a new feature, which is digital NOTAM, which we do not have at the moment, for CPI compliancy and for early adopters only. And it's a set of 8 scenarios that are needed. Then we have the Wave 2, the famous Wave 2 in 15 May 2025. That's where it's the first delivery for full operations. And there we'll deliver a new iteration of the IDL, the partial IDL, which will integrate the EAD capabilities. We'll also replatform some of our main backend systems, IFPS and ETFMS, for which we do not foresee impact on you, or at least major impacts. Then we'll bring in a set of other improvements, which I will detail in further slides, like DNP, the crisis management, and the NM user interface. Then Wave 3 and beyond will deliver the full IDL, the full integrated data layer, so integrating also CACD capabilities, our central airspace and capacity database, into one consistent model and set of workflows. We'll also develop a brand new airspace management digital product, okay, for civil military airspace usage coordination. And we'll be able to enable across the board simulation network impact assessment, thanks to IDL being the enabler for that. That brings all the data in one place. We'll be able to really improve the way we do network performance. Then we'll bring also an integrated flight and flow, so a new or evolved integrated IFPS and ETFMS, which will bring also single flight view, so achieve single flight state. Finally, we'll continue phases of the NMUI evolutions. One phase will be to be ready to start the decommission of the CHMI. Another one will be the replacement of the EHMI, so the ETFMS HMI that is mainly used in the NMOC. Finally, we'll bring a set of capabilities around data services, business intelligence, and machine learning. So, to look back a little bit what's been achieved in the last 12 to 18 months. So we first launched the business teams. So we got a very diverse, highly skilled, young, dynamic team of product owners, business analysts, and we defined all the ways of working. The processes liaise also with the other parts of the network management for ConOps expertise, strategy, etc. Then we defined the digital product roadmap, which is based on the service roadmap that has been mentioned yesterday, which is listing all the capabilities that the NM systems are providing. And based on this service catalog, on the current limitations that we have, the technical depth and the planned evolution, especially with the high-level NM ConOps that has been published recently, we have defined the transition steps of the current systems or new systems and services to this new ecosystem of digital products, running on the target architecture, which is, as Phil has presented, the digital platform. Then, with this digital product roadmap and these steps, it means that we have defined or we have identified a set of orders that we needed, a comprehensive set of orders that we needed to deliver wave 1 and 2, and some of which we have already signed and kicked off. For example, DNP editor or IS data management phase 1, NMUI phase 1. So then we've worked on the user outreach, so internal and external, through the ConOpses, and this you know through NetOps and NetSys, but also HMI consultations. We have communicated through the EUROCONTROL working arrangements, also the steering groups. We even had in the last EAD SSG a dedicated day on INM, because EAD services are really the first big delivery in wave 2 or for INM. Then we've tried the ecosystem. We had to set up processes, tools, working practices, working in a complete new setup, as Sale has explained, with industry partners in a fixed price mode, fully outsourced. So for that, we had 2 initial orders of a reduced, so small scope, but really to test the system. So one initial order based on IDL was a stepping stone to the IDL delivery and the EAD replacement in wave 2. And this was done in more an agile mode, because we wanted to see how we can deliver very quickly, small steps, small iterations of features, and be able also to adapt. And then we did another initial order to validate architectural assumptions, mostly around ETFMS. And due to the complexity of the problems that we want to address, we used another way, which is more an iterative way of development, where we have some bigger chunks delivered, but where the roadmap is more clear. Finally, we kicked off a lot of ConOps with our colleagues from strategy, like the 4D trajectory ConOps that has been presented yesterday and that is already under review. We had the flow, airspace management, IDL are under development at the moment. And then we have also launched some smaller dedicated focus groups on flight plan assessment and alerting systems. So the famous TCO, SAFA, ACC3, and also around safety, for example, the call sign similarity tool and features. Also B2B, voilà. So we are we are preparing, as Sil has explained, all the requirements that we need in a timely manner to be able to deliver as planned. So what's happening next? So I will now zoom on the main deliverables for the next 2 years, and mainly wave 2, the details. 3 main pillars: the integrated data layer, the DNP, dynamic network plan, and the crisis management tools, and the new NM user interface. So on the integrated data layer, it's going to be the first a partial release of IDL with a brand new EAD, so supporting EAD capabilities, but ready for the digital world, meaning introducing digital NOTAM. Full digital NOTAM, enhanced pre-information briefing, will also include Meteo in the pre-information briefing by using the operational Meteo data. Will support the current and latest version of the IAXM format, 511, and will bring a modernized user interface. So on that one, I added a slide to explain a little bit how it will happen, because it's really a major change, or at least it's a big delivery. So we are planning a smooth but swift transition while ensuring business continuity. For that, we're involving the users on the new or refreshed HMIs. We are involving them also on the migration planning and the definition of early adopters concept and how this is all going to work. Early adopters in 2024, they will have access to early versions of the software, participate to user acceptance. They will be the first batch of users to transition on the new EAD systems or the partial IDL. The migration of EAD clients will be gradual and include training and certification aspects, but this transition phase will last 2 years and end in 2027. Then on the dynamic network plan and crisis, so we'll go from daily to a dynamic network plan with an enhanced editor, including briefing and feedback capabilities, mainly for NMOC. And this is a pioneer project for INM because we are prototyping together with you, the stakeholders. So we have AO, FMP representatives, and I would like on behalf also of my team to really thank you for your participation, active participation. I think this is also part of the digital transformation and the new way that we want to develop software, by really involving you in the beginning, prototyping together and delivering what is needed. We'll also develop a fully new interactive and visual network plan, focus on what matters to you, because you know the network plan at the moment is a PDF. Here you will be able, on an interactive map, to really see what is of interest to your area. Then we'll consolidate all the crisis management tools in a coherent and easily accessible manner. And I think what is important to notice, and I've already said a little bit earlier, is that until 26, 27, except EAD, DNP, and crisis, the service offering will remain stable. Okay, so including CHMI, B2B, we'll continue to build on B2B. So these are the changes that we foresee for 25 and nothing else for the moment. Then, and this is my last slide, it's the introduction of the NM user interface, or shortly called NMUI. So it's a single entry point to NM, giving you direct access to the tools and information you need. Okay, we'll have a brand new information hub, grouping at a glance all the key network information. For example, the DNP view, the DNP viewer will show a map with what we are with some network issues, with headline news, etc. Everything will be maintenance, whatever. It will all be on one screen. Then we'll leverage, and this is important, we leverage on all NMP applications and user groups. So everything that has been done for NMP flow, NMP flight, the user consultations, we will continue on that. We do not restart from scratch. I think what has been done is really great, and we are really capitalizing on that and continuing to make it even more tailored to you users, to your tasks, sorry. And finally, on a more technical side, we are also improving the EUROCONTROL design system and the integration guidelines, this to deliver a fresh, consistent look and feel across the board. Okay, this concludes my presentation. So I'll give you the floor.
Thank you very much to all the team. So we have now a first hands-on view at what's going to happen in the next 2 years. We also have with us the Chief of Technology and all the head of the units of the technology division prepared to answer any technical questions. But obviously from ops, user and technical perspective, we are ready to answer any questions that you have, either by using the yellow cards for later in the Q&A, but for now on, I would like to open the floor and see if there are any questions, thoughts, and views. And of course, I'd like to thank the suppliers that we have there in the room, Indra and Atos, and thank you to all the partners for this titanic journey that we do together. So we have also other slides, but I think it was enough on slides. Yes. Yes, please mention your name and the organization and shoot the question.
Yeah, good morning all. Coşkun Koşal from Sun Express Airlines, Turkey. Sid was mentioning about companies or software companies who will produce the software for the EUROCONTROL. But do you have enough, or does the companies or the software companies have enough aviation background? Does this software will cater our needs? Or does the EUROCONTROL has enough source to support them? If not, we are more than happy to support or test or contribute on this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. I can assure you they have enough aviation experience. That's one of the criteria on why we selected them. They are known for all the ATM systems that they produced around the world. Also, the other partner, which is in the second contract that we signed, these two big contracts that still mentioned. One is we call it DPRO, which is led by Indra, and the other one is led by the consortium called ACE, which is Atos. It's a French company, 210,000 employees around the world, and a Belgian company, Kronos. Atos and Kronos, they were previous suppliers of EUROCONTROL. Also, the Atos is in the third framework contract that we have to supply the infrastructure of EUROCONTROL. So they are not really newcomers on the market. So maybe also to explain a bit until you, but thank you for offering. We will need all of you for when we start operational testing and also all this prototyping and focus groups and stakeholders involvement on what you would like to see, the interfaces, data that you want to access, and so on. So any other questions? Yes, in the back, please.
Thank you, Hervé Damiano from DSNA. Have you studied the potential impact of the overall network performance during the transition? And if so, can you give us a flavor of your outcomes?
Yes, and I think that is one of the constant worries, and that's why before switching to the new system, what is very important is what we are telling you all the time about this digital platform. The way how you connect to us and where these applications will sit, they need to ensure the performance, which we will probably not have it if we will continue to evolve. For sure, we will not have it if we will continue to evolve with the current systems. So the digital platform is there to enhance the scalability and the speed of accessing. So Razvan wants to take further, and then I'm looking in the back if the team wants to add anything other. Jean-Michel.
I think this is a very good question, and it addresses also the operational transition, like for any other system. And I think this was your question. We have very good news in this sense. Actually, next week we will start discussing the details of the transitioning on the user interfaces. It was mentioned several times in the presentation made by Ralph. And in the course of this year, probably even before the summer, we will come to you, because this will not be our decision, to present you with this transition plan and to start planning actually what needs to be done from an operational transition point of view with the airlines, with the FMPs, with the AMCs, etc., etc., etc. What is also good to know is that the current interfaces that we have, especially those that we presented yesterday with respect to the N-Connect, what we do expect is that they will be put on the digital platform without any major changes compared to what you have today. And many of you have been part over a number of years on the development of the flight flow RAD interfaces. And we had quite a good feedback from the airlines, from the NSPs concerning the flow interface, from the national RAD coordinators on the RAD interface. So all this is expected not to change too much, and this is a good thing. And after we re-platform all this, of course, the new evolutions will start. But of course, as usual, the new evolutions again will be discussed with you, because we are not going to make the new evolutions just for our own. You've seen yesterday's Impino's presentation, for instance, on the cooperative traffic management. We have a bulk of new evolutions that we are foreseeing to happen after we stabilize the situation with INM, and everything that we have currently goes on INM. I don't want to start giving now dates. I prefer to wait for a couple of weeks before we come and give some precise dates. But this is inside the house very well in hand.
Thank you. I think we answered the question.
If I may, just to come back from the ops center opening perspective, there will be nil effect on the network and the service provision. So that's at the end of October, beginning of November this year, when the new center goes operational. Because we're moving on the same system, as Mattis explained, you should see no issues there at all, and it'll all be fully tested in advance, just in case there's any lack of clarity there. Thank you.
Yes. Go ahead.
Robert Winker, DFS Germany. Razvan mentioned the N-Connect like Pino yesterday, and Hatice mentioned the NM27 and some technical updates, especially in the RAD application, which is operational since a couple of years. We have got still some bugs which we'd like to have fixed, and we as the operators have the feeling that in the past months there was no capacity at NM whatsoever fixing those bugs, and we hope that those bugs will be fixed soon to relieve the pressure on the RAD team, and as well to have more or less effort for the RAD coordinators using it.
Yeah, I want to reassure that it goes without saying in these technical fixes, but also bug fixing, hot fixes issues that will continue. So in fact, that's one is the fine trade-off that we need to do, and ensuring business continuity and then bringing developments in time. So yeah, in the back, please.
Yeah, good morning, Dirk Bresser, Schiphol Airport. Actually, what I kind of miss in the ANSP and airline perspectives is obviously the airport perspective. And we're building a new AODB right now, an airport operational database, which I'd love to, well, at least integrate or start with, collaborate with EUROCONTROL in terms of, well, lighten up the black box that airport operation is. So I'll be very happy to collaborate with you on that from an airport perspective.
Razvan will tackle that.
Yeah, what is important to say is that at this point in time, we develop 3 concepts of operations. We've alluded to that yesterday. Based on the network concept of operations, we are developing a 4D trajectory concept of operations that is in a very deep stage of consultation right now. Probably we will have it finalized by summer 2023. And this concept of operations will be the basis for the detailed future evolutions of INM. The second one covers ATF ASM evolutions that will be finalized fully after the summer, but will enter in consultation prior to the summer. And the the last but not the least is the IDL, the data layer concept of operations, that will include all the data aspects. Initially, it was a very trivial thing. We were thinking EAD, CACD, simple thing, but it evolves into something that is extremely forward thinking, and that aims for the final stage of the INM operations in terms of data management. And there we had a very good, I don't know if no, Vincent is not here. We had a very good discussion already with our airports operations unit to include much better than we have today the airports part into it. And I'm very happy to hear that, because please bring to Vincent absolutely all the elements that you would like to see integrated in the system. This is the right moment. We are writing the concept now. It will go in consultation prior to the summer, and we would very much love to have this kind of forward-looking thinking in the concept. Many thanks.
Thank you, Razvan. No stakeholder and no data left behind, basically. Yes.
Hi, Ismail Polat from Istanbul Airport. Quite an ambitious plan and very detailed information. Thank you very much for that. Just a quick question, if you can mention a few things about cybersecurity and resilience of the system, which I'm sure it's all being thought inherently. I think it will be good what next steps are considered in terms of cybersecurity and resilience.
Okay, Martin Kutilek, you want to take that?
Good morning. Yeah, of course, cybersecurity is very key in all digital element today. Of course, we're taking that very seriously. So, of course, all the concepts, secure by design, secure by default, are taken into there. I don't know if you have any kind of more specific question on that, that I'll be happy to answer. But of course, security is at the core of all the concept.
So, yeah, just to complement, thanks, Martin. So indeed, the architectural work that we have done, especially of part of the first two waves, they take fully into account security aspects and also the cybersecurity aspects. I think also on that one, we leverage on the knowledge our industry partners they do have, and not only Indra, but also Atos as a big IT company. So all that knowledge is brought into the exercise. And so from the design phase, we take it very seriously to include all the elements related to security and cybersecurity, to make sure that we design them from the start, so that they are fully taken into account once we basically start developing the software. Yeah.
Thank you. Anything further? So we are either very clear or it's very early in the day. You are in a need for the coffee. Maybe until you are thinking any further questions, I want to come back to this last point that Sil made. Before any order is signed or any work is starting, what we see for every product, for every order, it's the architecture outline. And where the architecture team of the suppliers in EUROCONTROL, they work on the technologies, cybersecurity, the way how we access it, is it enough for ensuring the flexibility, scalability, and the speeds that we want? And how do we do, which tools, which licenses we need, how the software factory is fitted for purpose, and so on. And that is escalated to the different levels of governance. And once it's agreed, then we go and do any type of coding. Right. Anything else? So I think what I suggest is, because I see no further questions, we'll maybe take an earlier break, but we will not extend the coffee break, because as such, we will allow, because today it's planned only for 1 hour lunch, because we want you by 3 o'clock, 3:15, we have the shuttle buses to the airport. So basically I suggest we start now with the coffee break and we come back at 10:45. And after that coffee break, Paul Bosman will moderate the session 5 on European ATM infrastructure. So there will be the last session before the lunch break, and then a lunch break for about an hour and some minutes that we will save in these 2 sessions. Please don't forget the questions and the yellow cards. We have a handful of those yellow cards with questions received yesterday. And then between 1:30 and 2:30, Tony and myself will moderate this firing Q&A, any last questions that we have in those 2 days. Also, the moderators of the sessions, they prefer the summary bullet points from every of the sessions that we have seen in those 2 days. And by 15 o'clock, we will close the forum. So I will see you at 10:45 back. So enjoy the coffee break and the networking. Thank you very much. The second session of the morning, led by Paul Bosman on European ATM infrastructure. Paul, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Tony, and good morning, everybody. Good that you keep on coming back. Yeah, so there must be either something of value in this room, or it's the lunch that you're gonna get afterwards. But again, it's good, really good to see so many of you all here in the room. We will now go further, a bit more techie. Yeah, so stay with us. We're trying to make it attractive. We've got lots of pictures, etc. So even if you don't fully understand everything that we're saying, the picture shouldn't be too bad. What we're going to be talking about today is really how is the ATM CNS infrastructure doing in the new normal, so to say. And it is not necessarily a nice picture. First of all, data link. We need to squeeze the existing CNS infrastructure and certainly the data link system more. We need to debug all together the final things to really make sure that the technical performance is continuously good for everybody. And then we can start reaping really the operational benefits that we so desperately need to further get some more capacity in the European system. Second, as I said, it's not always a nice place out there. The CNS infrastructure is under, I would say, increasing threat. And some of these threats are, I would nearly say, unintentional or not completely politically driven, etc. But GNSS interference, 5G interference are problems that won't go away out of their own. We need to work this. We need to look at what type of procedures we can put in place to keep it all safe, etc. And you will hear from the experts some more on that. Third, believe it or not, but we have too much CNS infrastructure, way too much, really. And we're not doing ourselves a favor with that. Take the example of the surveillance infrastructure. The sheer fact that we have so many different radars interrogating the aircraft means that we get into a situation of what we call over-interrogation. And the guys will tell you, will show you what that means in terms of an operational impact, but it is basically aircraft disappearing from the ATSCO screens, sometimes whole fleets that don't appear anymore. This is serious business and we need to work all together to improve that situation further. And last but not least, and this is not unique to the aviation system, but we are getting increasingly under attack by the cyber guys, yeah, by the bad boys. They are not necessarily always directly targeting aviation. Sometimes they are with ransomware things for airlines, etc. But sometimes they're just trying it out and they're just trying to see where they can get into the system. Now, the EUROCONTROL EAD was hacked 2 years ago. Yeah, that was not a pleasant experience, I can tell you. No data was corrupted. Nothing happened operationally. That's the good news. But we are increasingly convinced that one moment or another, something big is going to happen in the European ATM infrastructure system. And we need to be extremely vigilant altogether to keep it cyber secure. One of the options, and that's only one of the options, and there's many, is that we work better together and pooling our resources to deliver the efficient services through common procurement. We won't dwell on that too much. That is for other fora, etc. But this session here, we have a very good set of speakers on data link. We have, first of all, have our program leader, Nikos, with, and I'm very grateful, 2 captains from Wizz Air. Thank you very much for coming to this. We got Gary talking to you more about the navigation interference. We got Petro Jonas talking about the 1030, and again, very grateful to Jürgen from Skies to share their experience with us. And then Patrick Mana, who doesn't know Patrick, I nearly need to say, yeah, will say more about cybersecurity. And there we're very grateful for our colleague Eric from Aéroport de Paris, who will also share his experience with all of you. So yeah, hang on. Yeah, it's getting a bit more techy, but it's still very, very important. Okay, Nikos, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Paul. So what, I suppose all of you, you're having telephones with you, you're using messaging, you're using chatting, and this is very normal. So what I will talk to you about is to try to bring this normality and this very normal case to the aviation world. And myself with Peter and Ben actually will try to show you the aviation efforts on how to bring this normal thing from our daily life into the aviation and to try to see and solve the remaining problems. What I will cover in my presentation is three items. I will just provide first a brief update on the deployment status in the European environment. I'll show an overview of the observed performance, and then I will also highlight what NM is doing in terms of data link. So starting with the deployment side, I have actually two slides, and the first slide is focusing on the deployment on the ground side. So what you see here on this picture is a lot of green, and this is the states actually that they have deployed data link. And you hear a lot about data link. So why data link? First of all, there is an implementing rule. There is a law that is requiring to deploy data link in the European airspace. And there is a second law that is also requiring, this is applicable only for the ground, and this is requiring the ANSPs to implement the automatic forward of the logon information. These two European laws are very important in order to support data link, and the requirement is to support everywhere in the European environment data link above flight level 285. And you also have, in some cases, data link implemented above some local flight level of implementation. When we're talking about data link, of course, we are interested in the services behind, and there are four services. One service is for the pilots to log on, and then we're having three services that allow controllers and pilots to transfer communications, to have clearances, and also another important safety service is to check that the push-to-talk button is not accidentally pressed, jamming the frequencies. So you see here on this map that many of the European states have implemented data link. However, we are still having three states, three NSPs that they are still have not implemented them. The situation also is not very good on the automatic forwarding of the ground. While most of the links are operational and supporting, there are some links that they are still creating some problems. And when the automatic logon is not actually there, then this creates discontinuity that will stop the data link, and that is not allowing for the uniform use of the data link throughout the flight. We're having also a number of operational restrictions. Some of them will go as away, and some that they will need to be implemented by some NSPs, like the use of the logon list. On the bottom of the slide, you see also a link to our data link dashboards. So this is on our public website, so you can get up-to-date information on the status of the data link operations in Europe, and also the implementation status. Now, looking on the airborne side, if we had a picture actually to show, that will be more green here. So the situation on the airborne side for the operators is very good. So we're having above, it's about 82% of the flights, they're indicating capability to do data link. And when we're talking about capability, is declaring, having the equipage, but also having trained the crews. And you're going to hear from my colleagues with how important training is in this process. We do have 15% of the flights that they are exempt. And we do have about 2.4% of the flights that operators, we believe they are still misfiling and not filing correctly the data link fields. But some of them, they don't do it on purpose, because there is actually a number of them, they are exempt and they are not filing correctly. We see a small percent, that's about 1% of operators, that they are not really complying with the rule requirement, in the sense that they are not equipped, they are not filing J1, but they do fly above flight level 285. That was tolerated, especially in the COVID period. Now, with the traffic increases, some of the NSPs are coming and requesting maybe some actions, and there is already some discussion potentially about rejecting flight plans that they are not having a declaration of J1 and declaring to flight above flight level 285. What you see on the right-hand bottom side, we have prepared a leaflet as an M, providing information on how to fill the flight plan. So whoever needs more information can contact us on that one. And we have, and that leaflet has been helping a number of cases, operators to sort the problems and they were not able to log on. Moving now on the second part of the presentation on the performance aspects, we're having every Monday in an M on the Monday afternoon a regular telecon with the different stakeholders to discuss various items, and detailing is one of the things that has been discussed. So I chose actually for this presentation 2 of the slides that we regularly show in this forum. So the first slide, this slide, and I'll start from the top right. On the red table, you see what we call the safety benefits. You see that the pilots and the controllers using data link in the period of 4 weeks in January, we saved close to 8,400 minutes of radio telephony voice time. That means that the voice channels was less congested and prohibiting maybe some overlaps and having to repeat information on the voice channels. And the second line on this table shows what we call the stuck mic events. So we had 74 instances that controllers in the European airspace asked 281 pilots to check if the push to talk button is accidentally pressed. Moving to the figures, on the top side, you see what we call the usage of the data link. So starting from the left side, you see that when the aircraft is logging on, usually the controllers, there is exchanges of data link, and we're having senders ranging from 90, now it is in most of the cases is above 90%. There are some exemptions with some senders that there are some particular issues, but in general, there is a very good rate of doing some data link. And this brings me to the second picture in the middle. This some data link maybe is varying across different NSPs. We're having some on the top, like Germany and MUAC doing close to 2 or above 3 for Germany, 3.4 messages per flight segment. And some of the other senders are having much less. In some cases, due to the airspace, for example, taking Sky Guide there, it is a very smaller space with 2 senders, so sometimes there is not a lot of opportunities to do data link. Also, on the bottom of this graph, you see 2 other pictures. This is showing information about what we call key performance indicators. One addresses the discontinuities of data link, and this is where you see a lot of problems in different senders on the ground. That there is unexpected interruptions of the data link. On the delay side, in general, the picture is much better, so the delay has improved over the last period. The last thing that I want to raise on this graph is on the right bottom side, you see 2 tables, and we regularly provide information for the top senders and the top operators in the European space on the last week in terms of the provider abort, because this is one of the KPIs that is creating a lot of nuisance when it happens, the interruption to the data link. Moving to the second slide in terms of the performance, this is actually focusing on the airborne side. I mentioned before the log on, and this is actually showing the log on rate of the top 40 operators. So you see also here a great variability in general, and you see also with a color code that you see in the middle on the top, there is a good log on rate on average in most of the operators. There are some cases with some operators for good operational reasons that this log on rate is not as high as you see. For example, we're having many operators on the top side, like Jet2, Wizz, EasyJet, Aer Lingus, Eurowings, and also more than close to more than 90%. So that's a very good rate, and we're having some other operators with a smaller wagon rate. NM is actually discussing regularly with some of the operators, and we do try to provide guidance. One of the things, and you'll hear that also from Wiz, is information on training and the standard operating procedures is an important tool to make this picture improving. The last slide that I have for you is to summarize the 6 things that NM is doing for data link. So first of all, being the motto also for Eurocontrol, we are here to support the stakeholders. So we are supporting the operators, the flight crews, we're supporting the NSPs and the controllers, we are supporting the communication service providers, they're providing the data link service, the DSP. Of course, we're supporting the avionics industry and the airframers, but we also support the institutions, the regulators, the European Union, EASA, and all other institutions. Another important function that we are doing is really to look at the problems when they are reported, to analyze and investigate and try to find the root cause of the issues. And that we do it in close coordination with the stakeholders, with the industry, with the overall community. And we are really trying to facilitate and playing a coordinator role in order to achieve the solutions and then deploy these agreed solutions. Also in Brittany, we are offering interoperability testing, which is mainly targeted to the operators, the NSPs, but we're also supporting industry. For example, we're doing regularly support for flight test from Airbus, from Boeing, and also we'll be planning to support Honeywell in the future. We're having 2 data link groups, the data link performance monitoring group and the data link support group, and we are providing the support and to facilitate and the secretariat for these groups. And you show also this monitoring of the performance and then reporting appropriately to the different stakeholders for information as well as an action. And the last but not least of the point, and this is really one of the things that needed to happen in order to improve the data link, is harmonization. So what we have seen in Europe is we have seen a fragmented implementation and deployment of data link. So we really, if we want, as Paul said, to try to achieve the benefits of the data link, we need to address this significant impeding to using more data link. So we need to address harmonization. And for that, what we're working to provide is some updated guidance material for the controllers and the flight crews for the harmonized operations. At the same time, we also, there has been also on the technical side, different message sets being implemented. So we also try to harmonize the ground deployment on the message set. And we really rely on the support from the users, especially from the NSPs, as well as the operators, in order to achieve this thing. So our plea is, please, let's work together to try to make data link a better experience. I think already people are acknowledging the benefits, but we can definitely provide more benefits. So this concludes my presentation, and I will just, before introducing, before asking Peter and Ben to come here, I will just say why we chose actually also Wiz to present in this forum. So Wiz is one of the top 5 operators that is regularly, almost continuously appearing on this table that I showed you before with the top operators. They're having a very good performance in general. They're having a very good performance, and also they're having really the highest log-on rate among the top operators. So with this, I'll ask Peter and Ben to come present their side.
Thank you very much, Nikos. It's a great pleasure for us to be here. And yes, we will talk about how we implemented CPDLC. My name is Ben Salfadi. Apart from being a pilot, I'm also the group digital transformation and standardization manager, and my colleague.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Peter. I'm also captain and the group regulatory policy manager for the whole Visa group.
So today we have the following agenda. We have an introduction on how we implemented the system and our road to the successful implementation.
Also, I would like to take a few words about the benefits of using CPDLC.
And we identified areas of improvement.
So as you all know, Wizz Air is an ultra low-cost company. That means we have many basic, simple principles we are adhering to, which allows us to drive to our goal, which is keeping our costs to the lowest levels. One of the key principles we are employing is the single aircraft fleet. That means that we are only operating A320 family aircraft, and we are trying to keep, and we are keeping the set of equipment as uniform as possible. As a result of that, when we started to talk about CPDLC and the implementation of CPDLC, all of our aircraft were coming from the factory, already fitted all the necessary equipment for CPDLC.
Before going live and before introducing this into service, we basically had not too much information about CPDLC, and so therefore we decided to go with a complete entry into service program. This included best documentation and trial scenarios, and also we conducted many trial flights where we tested the different variants of our SOP.
Once the entry into service program has concluded, we have drawn the conclusions, which allowed us to come up with our SOPs, limitations, procedures around CPDLC and the usage of data link for itself. At that time, the coverage was very low. Obviously, this was a system which has just been introduced. So initially, we incorporated this information into OMC, which is route and aerodrome knowledge, because it was very regional. As the coverage started to spread and started to grow, we moved the content from OMC to OMA, and it became a general procedure required and recommended for all the crew members and all the flights. And our SOP elements has been transferred from the initial SOP description into the customized FCOM. So we have the OM manufacturer documentation, and then we are customizing for our usage. So now it's merged into the FCOM as well. With that, Wizz Air went live with CPDLC at 1st of August 2019, which is well ahead of the mandate, which was February 2020. And this was possible because we started way early the preparation, and then everything was planned in due time.
Well, to achieve success, we had to create a successful training program. And this included an e-training, which was scenario-based, and it was very descriptive. And we had every pilot in the company, at the time roughly 1,000 people, they had to do mandatory training, which was done in roughly 2 months. And at the end of the training, they had to do also a test, a multiple choice answer test. This was monitored by the training department, and by the time of the go live, everybody was finished. Now we adopted this course into our company intro training. So now every new joiner in the company still has to do this training. And by the time they get on the line, they are very familiar with the procedures that we have. Also, for the entry into service, we had a quick SOP leaflet provided to the pilots, which was a very good help. We had very positive feedback on that. Also, our crew members, they were quite keen to start using the system at that time because, as Peter mentioned, we already had them in the aircraft. The hardware was there, so they could see the screens every day, but it was all blank. So actually, they took it very well, and they started jumping on it and using the system right from the beginning with lots of motivation.
Regarding CPDLC and our experience, as you know, for 60, 70 years or so, the main communication channel for commercial aviation and aviation itself is voice communication transmitted through quite a disruptive channel, the VHF radio. Only 7% of our voice communication is transferred by the words itself. So you can imagine the effectiveness of this. I believe everybody who is here and who has ever used the radio has a story or two, which they are not so much proud of, that's for sure. Regarding CPDLC, this is a new system. It's a written text, very hard to misinterpret in our opinion, and it allows a very good way of crew coordination. So it's very unlikely that the messages will be lost or misinterpreted. And in the beginning, we thought as like everybody, when the very beginning of CPDLC usage, that this channel is actually slow. But once we started using it, the SOPs were becoming faster and faster, and the pilots were getting better and better. We realized it's actually a faster, most efficient, more efficient, and very precise system to use. Therefore, we have concluded into 5 main advantages, which is on your screen. I'm sure that you read already, what we see as a main benefit of CPDLC usage.
Of course, there are always areas of improvement, because at the time of introduction, we had limited knowledge about CPDLC. We can say that our SOPs are a bit over-descriptive at the moment, but this is something that we will address in the near future. And to give some advice to the ANSPs, sometimes we do feel that we do get many unnecessary messages. For example, you can now use the system or on voice communication only, etc. These messages can be a little bit disruptive, and sometimes it's very interesting to see that we do get CPDLC messages about frequency changes, but in the meantime, we also get contacted on voice, and that's a little bit, I'd say, unnecessary. It's kind of like when you send a text message and you also call the receiver to make sure that they got it. So apart from that, it's working quite nicely. And as Nikos also mentioned, there are some holes even in Europe in the coverage. So we do have to log on a couple of times, which can be an increase to our workload. So our conclusion for today is that it's safe, it's simple, and it's easy.
Therefore, we encourage all the ANSPs and all the aircraft operators who hasn't done yet to start using the CPDLC, and for those who are eligible and certified to use, to keep using it more and more and benefit from the advantages.
Thank you very much for your attention.
And as we won't be able to attend the whole afternoon, if you have any questions, you can see an email address of our boss, who is here also, the head of security and standardization. He's more than happy to answer all your emails or forward to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure. Where to look?
Okay. From Sun Express Airline, my name is Joshkun. And we do have all fleet equipped with the CPDLC equipment, but we have, unfortunately, half of the fleet is banned, is restricted to use it. Maybe some of the responsible here from EUROCONTROL, we won't understand why these fleets are restricted, because when the pilots are trying to use it, and they get communicate, they contact with the ground control. And do you have any like equipment, the fleets equipped but restricted in the Wizz Air fleet?
Regarding Wizz Air, not that I'm aware of. No.
Okay.
So as far as I know, all of our aircraft are capable and using the CPDLC.
Maybe a question to the specialists in the audience, and why we are restricted, because aircraft is fully equipped for the CPDLC, and we would like to use it as possible as we can, but half of the fleet is, there's a ban list in the EUROCONTROL website. The half of our fleets is banned.
Well,
thank you.
Okay, thanks for the question. And there are fora where we can go into much more detail on all these things. It's not a ban list, let that be sure. What I suggest that you take this offline with Nikos, because also what we see is that each geographical area is specific and what they do allow, what they don't allow, etc. So there is not just one rule for everybody in Europe on this, although we are absolutely striving for harmonizing the operating procedures around this. Yeah. So again, Nikos will take this offline with you. Yeah. Another question?
Yes, Polish Air Navigation Service Agency. I got one question. You just mentioned that all of your aircraft are equipped with CPDLC. So the question is why some of pilots don't want to connect to the system?
Well, it's hard to answer that question for a few reasons. One of them is that even though the aircraft is equipped, sometimes it can be inoperative. I'm not sure if you see it on the NSP side. I believe you don't. That can be one reason. And of course, like every SOP, you cannot in every SOP or none of the SOPs can describe every situation. And they might be negligent, they might be lazy, I don't know. But for sure, we are constantly and redundantly encouraging our pilots to use it more and more. And I believe we are successful based on the numbers. But of course, there is room to improve. We are not at 100%. Maybe that time we will be resting a little bit.
I really would like to indeed compliment, first of all, Wizz Air, because I think you're the highest or one of the highest really in terms of log-on rate around Europe. But also let's not forget there's a bit of a human element to it. If you are as a pilot, frequently flying out of a corner of Europe where the technical performance or the operational support is low, you try it once, you try it twice, you try it 3 times, and then you go like, hey, I got other things to do. Yeah. So it takes time then to rebuild that trust and confidence in the system. Yeah.
Just last few words. I believe the key here is the communication towards your pilot community. So if you see this not happening, then maybe you want to look for the root cause first and eliminate that.
Okay.
And anyway, just like air traffic controller, I ask or force pilot to connect, and then they are connected.
Good. And on that positive note, thank you very much again. Really appreciate that you guys came over to share your experience with them. And again, give them a good applause before we go to the next topic.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Then I think the next presentation is on the 10:30, 10:90. We'll find out when you click the slide, yeah?
Okay, it will be indeed, yes. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Petr Jonáš, and I would like to talk to you about the 1030, 1090 megahertz. I would like to explain why is it important to keep it in mind and to keep it in good shape. So I will do a little bit of introduction and some background on this topic, and then I will hand over to our guest speaker, Jürgen, who will talk about some practical examples of improving on this topic. So why is 1030, 1090 important? It's because it is a critical resource. It's an enabler to nearly all the cooperative surveillance technologies that are in use, be it secondary surveillance radar, all the different flavors, the legacy, the MODES, the military identification friend or foe, multilateration systems, ADS-B, and also the airborne collision avoidance systems. All these systems utilize the 1030 and 1090 frequencies for the uplink and the downlink. And then in the middle, we have the ATC or SSR transponder on board the aircraft that is communicating with all these systems and is supporting them. If the transponder is not working for whatever reason, there is no cooperative surveillance, and you don't see the aircraft unless, of course, you have a primary radar, but the TCAS also would not see the aircraft any longer. In addition, what increases the complexity of the system is the need for backward compatibility. So all these systems needs to be compatible between each other, which increases the complexity and increases the amount of transmissions that need to be made so that the different systems support each other. And this comes with a certain issues that we're facing. It's a collision of messages on both the uplink and the downlink side, is the very high transponder occupancy. And we're also very often in Europe, as Paul already said, asking the transponders to do more than what they were certified for. And then we're really reaching a situation where we might run into risks of completely losing the aircraft, having gaps of detection either for one or even multiple aircraft, reduction of performance, which then creates the need for additional infrastructure investment and creating even more, putting even more sensors in place, which doesn't really help the situation. There is a risk of safety net degradations. I mentioned the TCAS, but there are others. And of course, this also can create a barrier in terms of additional traffic and additional functions to be supported by these systems. Now, how do we assess the health of 1030 to 90 megahertz in Europe? EUROCONTROL, together with ANSPs and with local partners, have deployed a network of receivers. We have currently 70 ground-based monitoring receivers listening to these frequencies, monitoring the transmissions on 1030 to 90 24/7. We're using modern technology. On the hardware side, we're using a highly flexible software-defined radio platforms. And then we're using big data technologies to be able to collect all these information, store it, analyze it, and then to distill some useful information for the uses of this monitoring system. We're using the same type of receiver on board our monitoring flights, because not everything you can do from the ground. What we do from the ground is we use the traffic of opportunity as flying sensors, and we see what the aircraft are transmitting. But there are also other things that the aircraft are receiving, but not necessarily react to. And this needs to be measured as well. So that's why we regularly plan flight monitoring campaigns, and we fly with such monitoring receiver on board an aircraft around Europe to understand the situation as best as we can. Now I would like to talk a little bit about a concrete example of a measurement. So here I'm using the example of enhanced surveillance. I'm sure you're familiar with this, and you're familiar with the tangible benefits that enhanced surveillance is bringing to the controller. There's a lot of useful aircraft parameters like the selected altitude, heading, indicated airspeed, Mach number, and many more that are supported by this. But it's important to understand that this comes at a certain cost. At the cost in terms of the transponder utilization, and at cost in terms of these RF channels occupancies. As a quick example, the selected altitude parameter is extracted on average in core Europe 4 to 5 times per second from each aircraft, and that's much more than what would really need, what would be really needed to support the enhanced surveillance operations. The result of that is the picture on the left. It's a colored heat map of the opportunity traffic, where we listen to the transmissions of this traffic. And wherever you see red, magenta, or blue color, this means the transponder is operating above the level that the transponder has been standardized and certified for. And then we talk about over-interrogation, and you see that these areas are quite large, and they might be even a little bit large in reality, because we do not yet have completely full coverage of the monitoring system everywhere in Europe. And this creates a need for action. In the short term, what we're doing, we're investigating the really bad events, very, very bad over-interrogations, interferences, malfunctions, losses of detection, and things like that, where we investigate as quickly as possible. We try to contact as quickly as possible the relevant parties and fix the issue as soon as possible. Then in the medium term, we're focusing on good configuration of sensors, responsible configuration of sensors. I could summarize that in one sentence: simply don't interrogate what you don't need, don't interrogate what you don't use operationally. For this, we're developing, or we have already published, different guideline documents. I would like to highlight the one pertaining to 1030 megahertz management, which talks about the need to manage nationally all the different sensors, all the different interrogators using this frequency, to make sure that the combined load of them is manageable and sustainable. And also, before there is a new transmitter, new interrogator being installed, it is assessed whether the configuration of that sensor is efficient and is sustainable. Then we have in NM the operational excellence program. There is a specific work stream addressing the over-interrogation on 1030, 1090, where we work together with ANSPs, operators, and also military operators on these improvements. And we will have Jürgen in a few moments presenting some examples of such improvements that are being done. The key message that I would like to transmit here to you is that these improvements are certainly possible without or while maintaining the required performance and while supporting the operations. And what's also important is that thanks to the monitoring network, we can measure this improvement. So whenever there is a change done, we can compare the situation before and after and see if things are getting better as we deploy these measures. And in the long term, we of course have additional options at hand. So in the long term, we can talk about system modifications, upgrades of the sensors, radars, etc. We can talk about data sharing between centers, between sensors, and so on. We can also talk about new types of modulation of the transmissions, when you can then fit more information into a single transmission, which also helps, and many, many more. So that's it from my side for the introduction, and I'll hand over to Jürgen. Thank you.
Good day, everybody. My name is Jürgen de Klerk. I'm the supervisor of the surveillance department at SKYS. We are responsible for the surveillance infrastructure. First of all, I would like to repeat what Paul just said at the beginning of the introduction. That is that over-interrogation and certainly saturation of the frequencies that MODES is using can be quite dangerous. We know cases 2014 where an industry partner somewhere in Europe caused a saturation on the frequency and causing a big gap at MODES detection level, where ATC in that country was not seeing anymore any transponder information. Having said that, when you fly back this evening from Brussels Airport, I can assure you that you will be flying safe, and that above Belgium, we are in a position to state that our air traffic control has good information, has good radar information, and that you are in safe hands. Oh. Okay. So what has happened in order to improve the situation? We have established a project team in order to identify the problems that we had on the 1030, 1090 with the help of EUROCONTROL, with the EMET tool that was established in 2019. We took this as a full project. Why? Because the complexity of the improvement was not so much lying in the technical improvements, rather the coordination and the validation activities, coordination with our stakeholders and validation with, first of all, our main client, Belgium ATC. We found and concluded two priorities within this change. First of all, we found out by measurements, and we had to develop new measurement techniques to try to find out inside the radar what was happening. We found out that certain aircrafts were highly re-interrogated. While the radar couldn't find or couldn't get a response, he kept on trying until in his mindset, the target was out of beam, causing for quite some traffic to be severely re-interrogated. Second of all, the average rates of the 1090 extractions. You have to know that Belgium is a quite small country. Today, we have our own surveillance infrastructure. We have no formal agreements with our neighbors. We are starting to establish formal agreements with our military partner. But that means that in order for our SKYS radar coverage, we are on ourselves to make sure that our ATC is having a good and a safe picture of aircraft on their screen. So that also means that our military are operating their own MODES sensors. That also means that we have two industry partners in Belgium who have a test site. They can also operate, use the frequency. And as you know, Belgium is quite small. We have 4 neighboring countries who also have their radars, with at least for some, quite some overlap in coverage. So also contributing to the frequency. Of course, we can't do anything by our neighbors. Our exercise lied in that to optimize our own SKYS sensors. If I can highlight some of the challenges that we had. First of all, because, as I mentioned during the introduction, for ATC, for everybody working in CNS ATM, we could not see the problem at first. It was not clear and not really, we were not conscious that there was actually a problem. It was only by identifying the fact that we were exceeding the minimum operational capabilities of a transponder that we were aware, and part of the challenge was also to raise awareness to those not radar-minded to prioritize this activity. I also like to refer to a famous British physician, Lord Kelvin, and it's mainly part of our validation. So when you can measure what you are speaking about and express it in numbers, only then you can start to say that you may know something about it. So key to our exercise was to quantize the SS and also quantize every improvement in the process. Safety change, often underestimated, but we have a quite high and heavy safety and change process before we can implement changes. And as I said earlier, we established a project team because it was key to us to have a very good coordination with all the different experts in the surveillance chain. With radar surveillance, we are the first. We detect aircraft, but we are not the last. Within that chain, there are several other departments who will accept the radar data, who will track the radar data before it actually becomes available on the ATC CBP. I won't go through all the project phases. If you allow me, I would like to highlight that an important one was the user needs. We tried to map the current user needs. So when I'm talking about user needs, of course, our prior concern is ATC skies, but we also have the military, we have the neighboring countries where we send radar data to, and we have MUAC, who has the airspace delegated from skies from flight level 245. So it was important to define the current user needs, which information they need derived from a transponder, but also the future radar needs from that transponder, this information. We cooperated with the radar manufacturer to find out together within the current envelope, let's say, of the current system, what we could do. We also established a process of improvement, which was, if I can call it, a sort of iteration. We didn't want to go for the revolution, but we wanted to go for the evolution. We wanted to validate each step in the process to make sure that we didn't lost anything out of sight, and that safety-wise, we kept on managing the safety, the performance, and for sure also the expectations of ATC. We use traffic of opportunity, we use simulations to validate the improvements. And we, of course, each time we monitored a validated compliancy to the ruling performance criteria. Some title missing. So the technical solution, as I said, it's the easiest, the technical part. We adapted the scheduling of the radar. Part of the job was also to develop new tools, new ways of measuring that what we do was safe, was improving the situation. We also reduced the time on targets, the pulse repetition frequency, so that the radar would simply have less possibilities to interrogate. These are radars dating from 2020 and some of them 2010. So you cannot just presume that they have the latest technology with the latest implementing rules on board. So we had to do it with what we had in terms of software parameters. So these were two of the points. During the installation of the radars 2020, 2000 and 2010, frequency and frequency saturation was not being discussed. It was not analyzed. So at that time, the radars were set up that we would get all the possible information from a transponder as often as it could, so during every scan. And with this validation process, together with ATC, we established a new extraction scheme, which the one that you can see here, in order to find a compromise between ops needs where there was no additional latency introduced for our air traffic controllers yet, in order to optimize the situation. So to conclude, our solution lied in the combination of both, which helped to improve the situation. Yeah, this is, I go fast through it, one slide showing a new way of measuring. Inside the radar, what we configure is what is expected. As I said before this exercise, we were not aware and we didn't have the tools to do that. More important is the analysis we did together with our ATM colleagues in the surveillance chain and together with ATC. Basically, we sliced up airspace, controlled airspace in different levels. Obviously, the lower you go, the less big amount of radars will still detect aircraft. So our focus was in the lower slice of the airspace, controlled airspace, where we tried to measure the latency of the extraction of all the parameters we do from our radars from the transponder. I'm just going to highlight the cleared flight level because for us it was the most important one to monitor. And I'm quite sure that also for you, many countries are using in their ATC center the cleared flight level as a check that when an air traffic controller gives instruction to the pilot cleared for flight level 100, that this message is accepted and returned via the downlinked information from the transponder. So our focus was on BDS 40, the cleared flight level, and we wanted to make sure that every step in the process, it would not introduce additional latency to the downlinked information of the new cleared flight level. It's a lot of figures. It's not the intention to go into the details. I wanted to only show you the quite heavy validation process in order to really make sure that, as I said, we measured the improvements, but also we could measure that everything remained quite safe. An interesting conclusion we found out that it's not so much the latency of the radar if you would reduce the extraction rates in the event of the cleared flight level, but it's actually the reaction time of the pilots, which is the greatest contributor to the overall latency, going from the air traffic controller to give the instruction to the pilot to inserting it into its flight management system, and the radar downlinking it up to the moment that the air traffic controller sees it. So we found out that what we did, we introduced a negligible latency, but that the biggest latency was anyhow coming from the pilots, which is a normal reaction. You can only accept an instruction, put it in, but therefore this conclusion. And as I said, we did everything in close cooperation with our ATC partners, so that along the way they were fully aware what we were doing, and they were also giving their their acceptation in what we have changed. So when we talk about the measured improvements, I guess the figure will speak for itself. What you see here is the peak messages, long modest replies, and the moment the statistic is lowering is obviously the moment where we have implemented our solution. As you can see, we are talking about averagely, let's say 75. We are going to 50, 55. I'm not saying that now we are there yet, but it's an optimum compared to our operational needs. And it's maybe heavy to state, but we also now have a new margin that we know that in the future we will have this margin till the moment where we are further deploying our roadmap, surveillance roadmap, where we decommission old sensors, we put in new, which will even increase performance and will have a better situation in terms of 1030, 1090 occupation. Another one, so this is before and after, before on the left, after on the right situation. The color code is not optimal. And again, it's not a claim that we have resolved everything, but as you can see here, we do have improved the situation. And it's again also here going to a compromise between possibilities and operational needs. Besides the direct effect of polluting the frequency less, there are quite some effects we have that cause, and it's actually quite normal, some additional problems which are not always clearly visible. For example, the collision of messages. When one radar asks for a specific information from a transponder, it responds, and another radar presumes it was for him and takes this message as the truth. We call it swaps. We also found out that actually this effect was severely reduced when we changed the scheduling. As you can see, this is a timeline in days starting from the 1st of January 2020, that's number 1, till the 30th of April, that's 120. So at day 20, we changed configuration on radar 1, day 52, radar 2, day 94 on radar 3. So besides the immediate effect of improving the frequency, there is also an improvement, which is obvious, indirectly in all effects that could contribute in a negative way, in this case, to a good detection of aircraft. So that was that. Again, this is just one small part. We have a surveillance roadmap. We are in the process to install new radars. We have decommissioned 2 years ago old monopulse radars. We are having a project for nationwide one. We are going to, in our roadmap, also implement ADS-B. So the process is not over, but at least it's a proven action we've done to improve our current surveillance infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Jürgen. Thank you, Peter. We promised you we would go more technical, so I hope we didn't disappoint you on that angle. But I think what is made clear is that we cannot let this go unpathed. We need to work it. And yes, it's engineering, technical work, but the impact of not fixing it is an operational safety issue. It really is. We had this last year. We had in several places of Europe Dreamliners disappearing from radar screens. There's an EASA safety bulletin on this topic, etc. So this is a real operational issue. So please, in your respective organizations, give this the attention that it really needs. If no immediate quick question, I suggest that we move on. And then the next speaker is Gary. If he is in the room, there he is. Yes.
Yes, good afternoon. Gary Bertz, dealing with navigation and spectrum matters. So it's my honor to talk to you about 2 other nasty little problems that are very technical, but affecting the digitalization, modernization, benefiting of operational benefits in our airspace. You see here data from our EUROCONTROL voluntary ATM incident reporting system that is managed by my colleague Dragica. What you see very clearly there, the red line is with GPS and the blue line is without GPS, that the GPS reports are actually dominating these kinds of reporting. The other good news that you see on this slide that we are not only now getting reports from the airline operators, but we are also starting to get more data from ANSPs. Now, when you look at the actual events, we thought back in 2016, when we had 400 or 500 events, that was a high number. 2018 taught us differently. And then, of course, COVID hit. And unfortunately, that was just a reduction in report. We have since turned to other measurement methods. So we have a cooperation with Airbus, who very kindly report to us data from participating operators. They had 10,800 events in 2021. This year, this number has almost multiplied by 5, up to 50,000 events. And this is not all Airbus operators. This is only those that actually participate in the monitoring program. We get similar numbers from Ariane. They look more for the large area events, but they're not quite as dramatic. But the point out of the Ariane data that we see is, yes, we have certain hotspots in the Eastern European region, but we are not the only ones. Asia sees a lot, and there's no region in the world that does not have these kinds of events. And what you see now also is that in 2022, the number of events are bounding back up towards their previous high levels. What does it mean in terms of flight information regions affected? To make this slide very short, pretty much everybody that flies Europe to Middle East and Asia is flying through interference zones on an almost daily basis, and that can represent up to about 40% of European network traffic. Here you see the worry list. So here's the advantage of the pilot reports that we get. We actually hear what they tell us in the cockpit. We have spoofing question mark on the slide. In many cases, it's very difficult to distinguish the difference between what is potentially a misleading external signal being sent to the aircraft versus a simple side effect of the avionics integration in the aircraft. We know that the most significant safety risk that we have had occasionally, it's not many, but they are there, they are present, are false ground proximity warning alerts. And in a TMA, when a ground proximity warning alert goes off that is incorrect, what does it do? It coordinates, it can cause the crew to go full throttle and climb and execute an uncoordinated climb. So this is a safety risk that we are discussing actively with EASA, with the manufacturers, etc. You see here that this is a list of things that you really don't want to have. And so we have made some good progress to actually bring attention to this at the very high level. So we went to the IQ assembly and we had a resolution agreed on this topic. We also spoke to the ITU. So this is the International Telecommunications Union. That is a United Nations sister agency to the International Civil Aviation Organization. And they've sent out a circular, which is the equivalent of a state letter. And at the assembly of ICAO, we did actually agree now to make interference detection and reporting a priority, such that you can see improvements in next generation equipment. The vision of this is that instead of, where today every modern communication system will have health monitoring built in, we don't have that in aviation yet for navigation and surveillance systems. So the idea is that the receiver tells us when it's getting interference rather than us having to guess, and that then a picture can be brought to the tech room that actually manages traffic. That is not something we can display to a controller. But I've just been in Tel Aviv. What they have happened there is traffic at 10,000 feet is still in an interference zone. They go for the ILS instead of the RMP approach. That means 18 nautical mile more in terms of track miles. And it also means that the guys behind them cannot fly the RMP approach because the guy takes time to fly the ILS approach. So we hope that this can operationally provide benefit in the future. In the near term, we have built up a capability that looks at gaps in ADS-B position reporting, and now have a network that builds on Petter's emit network that figures out where the interference zone are. And you see here the typical areas, but we also want to work further to add value-added data on top of that, which actually analyzes, okay, what is the terrestrial infrastructure coverage in this area? What are the flight plan capabilities? And with that, then how many aircraft are potentially affected that would need help from the ATC side? Unfortunately, we think that due to ongoing conflicts, this will be a problem that aircraft are simply exposed to because they fly high altitude. We're doing many things on this front, cooperating with many parties, putting things into the pipeline that the next generation avionics will improve, but unfortunately this will take time. And so in the meantime, we have these initial capabilities that we're working on, and also to mature the associated operational concept and the various interfaces. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. So again, to repeat, we have built up in the last couple of months, triggered as well through the Ukraine situation, now I would nearly say pseudo real-time capability in EUROCONTROL to see where GNSS interference is happening. We are reporting upon that every Monday afternoon in the 4 o'clock meeting. The issues are very among the areas, the geographical areas that Gary just showed on his slide, and we're always looking as well whether the relevant NOTAMs have been published or not. But we also frequently, and I would say 1 week out of 2 or 1 week out of 3, we're finding areas elsewhere in Europe where intentionally or unintentionally GNSS interference is happening. When we find this, yeah, we're always trying to get in contact with you to see what can be done about this. Please react then quickly and see what it is that you can do. And we will make available to you any relevant data. Again, it's a growing concern in Europe. It isn't likely to go away anytime soon. So again, we need to do altogether what we can to keep operations safe. With that, I again open the floor for 1 or 2 quick questions. If not, we continue on the path of fear, and we thank Gary first of all for his presentation. Yeah, clear and concise, and as we continue on the path of fear with cybersecurity. Patrick, Eric, the floor is yours. And I missed one. So I messed up. Okay, we also have more on the path of fear, which is the 5G.
Yeah, so try and make this quick. So a big milestone this year happened where RTCA EUROCONTROL published a guidance document on radar, altimeter, RF interference, rejection, and tolerance. That's of course a mouthful. What the industry did is document best achievable performance with things that they can buy and put into the airplanes today without fundamentally redesigning a radio altimeter from scratch. That is, of course, not a new equipment standard, which is what everybody is craving, but it is taking time. If you want to take a guess, how many global experts worldwide are looking after radio altimeter technology? It's 20, 30, 40 guys that are doing this. On the European radio regulatory side, you see that 5G implementation is advancing in Europe as well. They want to do a compatibility assessment report, which is already late because implementation is advancing already. We've gotten delays, but the more delays, favors we get, that also means the more we need to deliver. Meanwhile, it's actually quite difficult to get the aviation guys and the radio regulatory telecom guys to talk to each other. They're not used to working to each other. Working with each other. They use different acronyms, different language, different procedures, different processes. Of course, it's not only driven by Europe, but also by things going on in the US. So the FAA has published a notice of proposed rulemaking, where first retrofits are actually being implemented. Unfortunately, the situation is that even after that first wave of retrofit, it is quite likely that a second or maybe even a third wave of retrofit might be needed. So this is very unfortunate in terms of forcing operators to invest in things at a time when it's not really a good time. Another thing that is quite significant in my view is that actually the reports of radio altimeter interference have increased following the first rollouts in the US. These are being very closely investigated. The problem is, of course, between a pilot saying, I see funny things on my radio altimeter, and actually linking that to 5G interference, that is quite a difficult problem. So we're not trying to raise more alert than necessary, but it is a concern that really needs to be worked, because at the end of the day, the radio altimeter is one of aviation's most sensitive systems, safety critical systems. This is just a little chart. Do I have a pointer? No. No, okay. So what you see is the 4.2, 4.4 gigahertz in the middle where the radio altimeter operates. You see existing ITU guidelines where the blue is a favorable aviation interpretation, the red, so there's differences of interpretation. The red is probably the better interpretation of an ITU recommendation that was established many years ago. Neither telecom nor aviation are terribly happy with that. But so you see here the improvement potential. And for those that speak the language of decibels, 20, 30 dB, that's a significant, dramatic improvement. The other thing that I would like to point out, though, is that as you see, once you go to 3.8 down to 3.0 gigahertz, that curve gets flat. So there is such a thing such as reasonable aviation filter rejection, filtering performance. Aviation needs to improve, needs to do better. But at the end of the day, there's also such a thing such as reasonable power levels. If you keep blasting out a lot of power for your telecom systems, then at some point it'll be, of course, very difficult to avoid interference with aviation systems that operate around 2 watts transmit power. So we did a think paper on this, some thoughts about how we look after spectrum. ITU has a treaty, the radio regulation. We are obliged to apply the latest innovations as soon as possible under that treaty. We're not doing that so well. We're being very good when it comes to like new engines that saves fuel and such, when it comes to getting new tech in CNS that just does what you can already do. That's a very hard selling proposition today. I'm not going to go into the details here, but the sector comparison that we did shows that aviation and telecom are of a similar size. So no, we're not small compared to them. But the moment you go to the ITU, we are outnumbered about 1 to 40. They have about 2,000 guys that liaise with their ministries of telecom. And you know, the aviation guys is really a small crew. And unfortunately, we are reaping the consequences of that lack of investment. There's no alternative right now on the horizon for something other than radio altimeter in the 4.2 gigahertz band. And so with that, unfortunately, low visibility operations actually remain at risk also in Europe. Now, deployment is possible, as several states have shown, if you keep transmit power around the airport at a reasonable level. But either way, we need to learn working better with telecoms, and we need to step our engagement in spectrum management. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. So again, this is a message where we're looking at all of you. It will require serious effort from the whole ATM aviation community to further bring this to the attention of your state representatives, etc., the lobbyers left and right. This is not a quick fix either. But again, it's one of these areas where the problem is only getting bigger. And with the commercial interests from the telecom industry, again, we need to act. Yeah, even if we're all very happy to have 5G on our mobile as well. Yeah, so please take this home. Talk to whomever you can in your own organization and see what we can do all together. I'm scanning the room to see if there's any quick question. This is it, Gary? Yeah? No further mistakes on my side? There's a question. Sorry, please. I couldn't see you from here.
No problem, Paul. It's Michael Nachtigaller from Lufthansa. Question. Do we expect any update of the EASA guidance material on that? Because they have 2 years ago, there were several workshops, there are recommendations by EASA, and that's what we actually are following as operators. So is there any updates according to that plan, the new knowledge of the reports you have just explained here?
So EASA, I think they've published a safety information bulletin on this. The EASA standpoint is that at this stage, there's no data that suggests what they call the presence of an unsafe condition. And so their point of view is that at this stage, no regulatory enforced action like an airworthiness directive is necessary, and they're mainly in close cooperation with the FAA to coordinate on their notice of proposed rulemaking such that European operators will continue to have access to US airspace. So there's at this stage, nothing envisioned on the EASA side. That said, it's also a bit of a difficult territory in terms of who is responsible for what. Radio regulation is not EASA's responsibility. They say that themselves. It's the states that are liaising with the ITU. And so this is a radio regulation business that is not directly an aviation safety regulation business. So what will come out of individual states' rulings on radio regulations and what that actually means for airports, that is handled at the national state level. We see examples in France who are very active on this, who have installed protection zones around airports and such, but this is really left up to the state level. So there's a certain boundary also between what EASA will prescribe to the operators versus what then the airports will do locally, because that falls typically under radio regulation, which is not under the EASA remit.
But only to clarify that, so what we need are really specific normal EASA acceptable means of compliance or whatever in order to precisely describe us what we have to do or not. And there could not be, especially it's a safety issue, there cannot be a gray zone between Eurocontrol and EASA to say, okay, that who is responsible for this situation. So we need one clear recommendation for the operators in Europe.
Yeah, so right now the focus is to work with the FAA on their notice of proposed rulemaking and to make sure that in Europe everybody knows exactly that they know what they have to do if they want to keep flying in the US.
And also to be really 100% clear, there is absolutely no gray zone between Eurocontrol and EASA on this topic. We work really well together on this topic. So again, we're all really trying whatever we can do. Jacopo himself is in frequent contact with the director of ITU, which again is not an easy man to get hold of, so to say. But yeah, it's a big thing which goes much wider than aviation. Yeah. Thanks again, Gary, and we swiftly move over to the Cyber Boys.
So hello everybody, happy to be with you. So together with Eric, we will share our views on what's happening in cyber. And I think what will be an important message today is that I would say all of you today, you have two roles. You have a role as being an aviation professional, but also as an individual, you have a role to play to support the aviation to be even more resilient. So here, this is a little bit what we have started to do, which is to derive the aviation threat landscape for 2022. So those data are mostly based on our own Eurocontrol ATM served data. We are just in the process of initiating the collection of information from stakeholders. Some are sharing it in real time. That's the ideal situation. I will come back on that. Others are sharing more, I would say, in a near real time, meaning once a year, which is good already. Last year, out of more than 2,200 events, 800 were coming from you. So thank you for that. So be aware that we'll contact you soon so that you can share the events, the cyber events that affected your organization last year, so that we can publish a report that will help you to understand how aviation is subject to cyber attack. Why it's important? Because you can say, well, it's the past. Well, to a certain extent, we can use that information to know how we can be subject to cyber attack, because they may change maybe the technical aspects, but maybe the techniques, the tricks can remain for some of them nearly the same. So you heard about maybe some ransomware groups which are attacked, but don't be worried, some will take over. Huh? So this is really a business where they make something like 20 billion euros per year, all sectors, not solely on aviation. You can see that the main motivation is still financial, how to make money directly by stealing money or by publishing a website that is impersonating your airline. You do nothing. They just decided that, well, it could be a good idea to publish a website that looks like yours, and therefore tickets are sold. And of course, the users never get the ticket. But sometimes it's data. And you know that the famous sentence, data is the new oil. Well, that's a reality. All information are worth some money. When they steal your email address, they can sell it to other guys who may launch a phishing campaign. So you receive some emails. And I will come back on that with concrete examples so that you can see the consequence. What is interesting also on the bottom left, you can see a kind of purple bar, which is DDoS, distributed denial of service. This is a kind of attack where they use a lot of IP addresses to overload a server, and the server at one stage is exploding, not being able to follow the level of stress. Well, this is typically an effect of the war in Ukraine. Last year numbers were really lower than this level. Last year there were some DDoS, some even having some critical impact, disruption of services. Keep in mind that we never had any report of a cyber attack having an effect on safety of flight so far, but on a provision of service, yes. So you can see that this number of DDoS has really increased significantly last year because of the war in Ukraine. You may have heard about many airports being subject to that. Eric will come back on specifically on this topic. So you can see that money is quite an interesting aspect. Aviation, we hold a lot of private data, which are really interesting for bad guys so that they can do something out of it. And also aviation is a way to be in the media. So you can quite interestingly convey some messages which will be relayed by the media. I don't know why people don't care about maritime. They are interested in aviation. So this is a little bit the kind of threat landscape that we see. Ransomware, that's interesting. This number has a little bit decreased in the first semester because of the war in Ukraine. Why? Because some group of bad guys were busy, supporting the propaganda and the cyber activities of the pro-Russian groups. Second semester, they're back to business. They need to make money. They have some objectives also. They are running like companies. They're organized, they're structured. When you are hit by ransomware, you will go to their website to start the negotiation. On average, the ransom is 5% of your annual revenue. And then it's up to you to decide whether you pay or not. Easy to say I won't pay, but you need to recover your service and you have some customers waiting for you. So that's the reality of what we face. Interesting is that that we are delivering some services to the aviation stakeholders of the EUROCONTROL member states. And I will take 3 examples of the kind of services we are providing to show you that cyber is something that is not only technology. There is a technology part, but not only. It's also people and processes, and that information sharing is important. So we have discussed about this anti-DDoS. So this attack DDoS, and some organizations have some solutions which are absorbing the bad traffic. They are called anti-DDoS solutions. The problem is that most of the vendors claim that they have a certain performance, but you don't know. So as Eric, as a CISO, the problem is that yes, this kind of solution, and then is, well, when should I panic and when can I sleep well? So what we have done is, like hackers, we have developed a DDoS ourselves. We have found a telecom company accepting to host us. 6 months of legal discussions. You can imagine that they were willing to have confidence that we were good guys and not having bad intentions. Being an intergovernmental organization help for that. And now what we are starting to do is in full agreement and cooperation with you to test whether your anti-DDoS is performing to a certain level. So you will know what is the actual performance and not what the vendor is claiming. So that's a concrete way, you see, to help you to have a good level of confidence in your cyber resilience solutions. The second one is the phishing awareness campaign. We're offering a service to see how the staff, any staff in the organization, can react to a phishing email. I've just shown a slide where we did the test within EUROCONTROL. So behind the pie, you have something like hundreds of persons, and you can see that some clicked. Why it's important? Because that's where you see, you remember what I said at the beginning, you are 2 roles as individual. Well, that's when you have a role not to click. And just to give you an example, this is really to raise the importance of the culture in an organization. Annette, you will be able to say to your father that after so many years, I still can't walk that carpet because we were clearly explained not to do so. Well, that's the kind of things you see that we also expect with these kind of things, is that, well, when you receive an email, if you have a doubt, just don't click, see? Whether it's an attachment, whether it's a link, well, think about it. Look at the actual email address. Is it coming from the name? Is it Patrick Mana and the actual email address is patrick.mana@eurocontrol.int or whatever? So there are certain things that we all have to do. We are all responsible for that. It's not the IT security, it's not only Martin who will do everything for us in the organization. So that's important. We can help you to conduct these kind of campaigns. And just a concrete example, we did it with a stakeholder, the 3 campaigns in 3 weeks. The first one, not so attractive, 20% of click. It was just a DHL parcel. The second one will be a bit more attracting. You have won whatever price, 50% of the people click. Third one, so 3 weeks in a row, super, very attractive price for holiday packages, 75% clicked. So you see that where we all have this responsibility to make our organization resilient. And the third one is what is so-called MISP. That's a service that we promote to share automatically cyber information. It means that not only you're saving resources, but also you are able to, I would say, be informed in real time. And time can be important. I don't know, you remember the Log4j vulnerability. It's something that happened in December 2021. You know, huge number of applications in the world, all sectors were affected by that. An aviation stakeholder was already attacked, someone trying to abuse the vulnerability 30 minutes after the vulnerability was disclosed. So we had to stop the service 30 minutes after the vulnerability was disclosed. This is a way to help us to be more effective by sharing information automatically. So improving the ability to update your security controls, but also in a more real-time feature. So that's something on which we are quite strongly pushing, so that we have a community that is helping each other. That's really an important feature. What I wanted to address is this new common service that we're about to deploy, the European Aviation Common PKI. What is it? It's the ability to provide means to identify and authenticate your machines. So when you connect the computer to computer, well, you are sure that you are connected to the intended party. So this is a common service that we will offer to the aviation community. And the objective there is to show compliance with the regulation, so that we are CP1 regulation for swim in particular, but not only. So the ability is there to create a trust framework, a group of entities trusting each other. They will be part of the club, and then we will distribute these certificates to those willing to use that, to make sure that the machine to machine is connected in a secure way. It will be a user pay principle, so everybody will pay for the service they will use in a commensurate way. But of course, the users will be the ones steering the solution. So EUROCONTROL will facilitate it from a procurement process point of view and from a technical point of view, but the users will be the one managing it. This project now is about to become operational. It's the consequence or the aftermath of what was done in César. Then in César Deployment Manager, we had a self-funded project, and we have submitted the proposition to deploy it to the NDTech. It was supported. So we are starting with, I would say, a simple approach where we all work together using EUROCONTROL procurement process to make life easier. And then we learn from that. Once this is in operation, to see whether we can go to another step, which is something where we derive our own requirements instead of using only commercial off the shelf. So we'll start slow so that we can learn, and then we'll see whether we can go to something a bit more sophisticated where altogether we can derive, I would say, a more aviation dedicated certificates. But the most important is that we will be on time to be compliant with CP1, and we'll have a solution operational by the end of the year so that you can start to secure even more your systems. So this is the number of organizations which have declared an interest. EUROCONTROL should be added. They contacted me Wednesday. So we have something like 35 organizations, being air navigation service providers, airports, airlines, meteo, manufacturers, and of course EUROCONTROL. So this is the community we have so far, which has declared an interest. And till the end of the year, we work together to launch the call for tender, select the company, and initiate the provision of the service.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Eric. We're running a few minutes over time, but again, it's the cyber threat is not one that will go away. It will only increase. Let that be a fact with the growing automation and digitalization of the European ATM system. What we can do at our level is work better together. And I think certainly, Eric, I think you've been very honest, very transparent. And again, we take well note of, we have a duty of care now, how we deal with this information, but to share the intelligence as things are happening in Aéroport de Paris, and very similar things are happening in the rest of Europe. Again, what we can do is work better together. So please all join in on this initiative that's on the screen, but also on all the other things. Let's please keep hand in hand and be, because again, in the end, we're going to be as safe as the weakest link in the whole European system. I look to see if there's any quick question from the audience. Yes, you're going to get lunch. I can tell you this already. Yes, please, at the back. Can you please state your name and organization?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Angelos Harlaftis, Epafos Advisors. We represent here Urania and Helios Space and Defense Group, a group which is working for the strategic autonomy of Europe for the last 12 years. So the question is about the cybersecurity, of course, is very important. The harmonization, which Nikos spoke, because harmonization is a very difficult word. And for example, the cybersecurity, do we, as Eurocontrol, we cooperate with EASA, with other cybersecurity organizations for the harmonization, because there are different types of harmonization. And about the communication of the VHF and the SATCOM, which we had, is there any upgrade over there? Because this gives us a kind of an advantage if we look at the strategic autonomy issue. So how is the strategical thinking of you about this autonomy? Because we have also white papers with cooperation with EASA and USA. Thank you very much.
So first of all, let me thank you very much for your questions. I thought there was more than one in there. So first of all, let me assure you that we work really hand in hand together with SDU, SDM, EASA, the Commission, wherever we can on this topic. ICAO, with FAA nowadays as well, on the trust framework setup at the global level. Yeah, we're very proud that we together with the FAA, we found a way forward on how to do things, etc. What I don't have for you is very quick, easy answers to all the different things that you've just asked. Yeah. By the way, if I can make some publicity, we'll also organize training events on cyber in our learning center in Luxembourg. But that aside, I would suggest that we take this offline during the lunch. Both Nikos, Patrick, Eric are fully available and can further go into detail on this topic. Yeah. I again look through the audience to see if there's any quick, easy question, or at least one with an easy answer. If not, then I hand over back to Tony. And again, thank you all the speakers. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Paul, and all the team. After a quick coordination, please come back at 1:45, and then we'll take it for enjoy lunch. I think we need to give the second main objective of user forum is networking. So please enjoy lunch and networking. See you at 1:45. That moderated the day one, which was a look back into 2022 network situation. I have a feeling we'll go very, very fast. The bus, I have not changed the timetable of the bus. Probably we can have more coffees outside, but right. Anyway, the session moderators, after we make sure, because I have to pass our master of ceremony, Guido Hassevus, that all of you have met outside. So, you know, he's also the one who tracks your feedback every year. And one of the, I would say, claims or complaints that you had, there is not enough time for discussion. So that's why this open floor discussion today is for interactions and Q&A. But okay, so day one, the first slot, a look back at 2022 network situation. I see we don't want to dwell further. In the session two, outlook for 2023, which was the summer 2023 challenges, traffic capacity outlook. main actions taken between NM and all operational stakeholders. Razvan, are for this session or for the strategic planning your questions that we have?
Yeah, I have two questions for the session 2 and another question that I've got orally on the session 3. So
let's do first the session 2, please.
Yeah. So I will start with the session 2, and it will be a common response between me and Stephen. We have a question here about the congestion expected in Europe for the summer season, and if there is any chance for prioritizing the long-haul flights, mainly Europe to Asia, because some aircraft operators might encounter the situation of fatigue risk management system. And this is a very good question. So first of all, especially for the flights to from Asia, in the more strategic preparation of the summer 2023 network measures, what we will clearly exclude from those measures would be the flights to from Asia. There is an additional constraint today on these flights, as a large number of airlines do not use today the Russian airspace. And it is very important to take this in mind, because the flying time for those flights has increased considerably. So those flights will not be subject to network measures. They will be allowed to operate on their most preferred trajectories. But in addition to that, in the NMOC, we have other opportunities to prioritize flights when you know that those flights are really critical, and Stephen will respond to that.
Thank you, Razvan. Indeed, we do. Through the use of the help desk, we have the critical flight functionality. And when an operator elects that they would like to use one of their quota of critical flights to indicate a flight is critical through the help desk, it'll then be exempted from the e-help desk manual rules, which means that our colleagues in the ops room here will do everything they can to reduce the delay encountered for that flight. And if you need more information on that, we're just about to republish our All Together Now work that indicates to all stakeholders in the network how they can best utilize the systems in the tactical and pre-tactical phases. And I'll only be too pleased afterwards to give more information for anyone who'd like it. Thank you.
Thank you, both of you. Razvan, any follow-up or next question?
Yeah, and just to say that those flights are subject to ATFM measures only when departing from Europe. When you come to Europe, you're not subject to ATFM measures. But from the strategic rerouting measures that we will take, those flights will not be part of. And then in the more tactical phase, the help could be provided through the NMOC, as explained. Then we have another question concerning our possibility to use an awarding or promoting process to airlines with less delays during the year. And the same applies to airports, to motivate companies to be more, to operate more punctually. I'm afraid that this is a very complex package. This is not really related just to the airlines. This is related to the overall ATM environment, and of course, such a wording cannot be put in place. But again, through the leaflet that and all the presentation that you have seen during those 2 days, we encourage airports, airlines, etc., to do their best to reduce all the other delays than the ATFM delays, and then we will take care of that. But again, for flights who are really critical, just use the functionality that Stephen just mentioned. So this was all for the session 2 preparation of summer 2023. I don't know if there are any other questions from the floor.
Jean-Marc, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Chair. Jean-Marc Flon, Groupe Aéroport de Paris. I wanted to make a comment, and I have a request, actually. First of all, on the comment, we've seen that on summer 22, there was a focus on airports and ground delay. We understand it was a difficult summer. However, I think the picture is not as clear as it was presented, because resources in airports are planned according to a program, And it's not because when an aircraft arrives on time and departs with delay that it is to be assessed as a ground delay. The resources are perhaps mobilized by other aircraft which arrive late due to the network. And so this is a more complex issue, I would say. I would say that airports are a complex jigsaw and with many pieces of puzzle, and they have to fit all together. So now my request actually in preparation for summer 23, I would like, once you have defined the measures of the network, to better identify and discuss with airports where would be the bottlenecks, what we have to prepare in terms of constraints, so that we can better plan our resources, because this is paramount, that planning of resources according to the delay to ensure that we have the enough buffers. This is all. Thank you for me.
Thank you, Jean-Marc. Stephen?
Thank you indeed, Jean-Marc, and it's a very good point, well made. I would just contest slightly a little bit that all stakeholders are in the focus area, not just the airports, but perhaps this time looking at this black box of airport ground delay, which is not to, as Vincent said, make it the airport fault, but just this arrival departure part of the sequence of a gate-to-gate flight. But all stakeholders are there. But the point is well made, and as you know, the team, Vincent and the team have made an offering to come down to ADP, particularly to go into much more detail with you. So thank you for that feedback. With regard to the measures for next summer, of course, working in close collaboration with Razvan and our ACD colleagues, Network Ops Management will also remain fully supportive. And indeed, again, the airport team, and I'll make sure Vincent does it particularly for all airports, not just ADP, of course, are in touch to understand exactly your feedback on those measures. So thank you.
Thank you, Razvan. Stephen, Razvan as a completation.
I think also very important here. Jacopo mentioned it in his opening speech. We are preparing the weekly rolling network operations plan every single week, and the issues expected for the next week or weeks are being presented weekly every Monday afternoon in the enlarged network director of operations teleconference. For this summer season, the intention is to highlight even more the problematic areas, which would be the network impact of those problematic areas, and try to draw the attention where they might impact, which areas of the network they might be impacted, but also a better follow-up will be put in place with the suggestions that are being made for improvement in the context of the weekly rolling knob, and how actually the concerned NSPs or airports have implemented these things, and do a very close follow-up of that. Right now we are in a calmer phase, I would say, but as soon as we will hit the switch to the summer schedules, this will become fundamental, and the ATFM strategic colleagues, together with the post-ops colleagues, will work together in providing this and in making this follow-up very transparent. But the follow-up in itself will not be sufficient. We need the feedback, and we need the action implemented from the concerned parties, I would say. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, and thank you to Jean-Marc for this point. Anything else on the session 2 outlook for 2023? Okay, so then we move to the session 3 of day 1, which was strategic planning, implementing the network strategy planning. Razvan, I think you have already one question on it.
Yeah, I had a question during one of the breaks on some parts of the presentation on the network strategic projects and how we are fulfilling the CP1 requirements, and I found this question very important to clarify all misunderstanding that this could raise. I have stated clearly that since 2021, NM is fully SWIM compliant, fulfilling all the CP1 requirements based on what the existing legislation and standards require for the implementation of SWIM. That makes your life a little bit easier, because through our compliance, you can become compliant much easier also. The question was in relation to INM. The fact that we are implementing INM does not change anything to this particular status. The INM will take over all the existing functionalities, compliances, etc. The fact that we are implementing INM does not change anything to this full swim compliance that has been fully achieved already since 2021. Just to be clear for everybody, it's not that because we are developing INM, we will go back and we will not be swim compliant anymore. We will remain fully swim compliant.
Thank you, Razvan. Anything on the strategic planning and network strategy plan? There were interesting discussion, I think, on 4D trajectory, TBO conopses, FFIs, CP1, anything else that you may wish to raise with the team? Okay, then in that case, we move to day 2, session 1, and that was on INM and the NM's digital journey. Any questions? The team is here still in the room. Any last thoughts, view, reactions to what you have seen is coming, and it's coming fast. We have these 2 dates that we have started to socialize with you. So 29 of November 2024 and 15 of May 2025. I see none. Then we move to Paul session with the European ATM infrastructure. Any questions remaining? Yes, the one I wanted to start from there because you defer to the question in the lunch break, but I think the topic is very important and interesting on cybersecurity and harmonization. Please.
We gave our discussion. We discussed with Nikos and the colleague at the cybersecurity. It was given some good approaches, but I want to contribute to your community to 2 other things. As you are having a problem with the 5G, which is also a problem of the citizens in the environmental and human health issues, which hasn't been resolved yet. It is proposed that you can send a delegation or a representative to the 6G, which the Commission has already started. We have a group discussing the 6G, the next standard. So maybe there we can resolve the issues which we have for all the sectors which are arguing with the 5G. And the second, I would like to propose for the harmonization purposes. Next week we have for the cybersecurity, we have the conference for the standards of ENISA, Sentinel-Lec and ETSI. It would be very nice if your community also could send a representative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this. We'll take duly note and we'll come back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I see no further questions. May I then kindly invite every rapporteur or moderator of the session. I think we capture just a few bullet points on every of the session. So and together with the all presentations, give us by Monday afternoon, and we will upload. We will still have to clean, especially the ones on cybersecurity that we cannot share. But we will add these summaries, and then by lunchtime also you will receive an email that okay, the things have been uploaded, but also you receive a QR code for a feedback form to give us what you would like us to improve, what you liked it, what you don't, and so on. But Stephen, can I please start with you of the summary of the first session?
For sure. Not only did we start with the first session, but we get the delightful pleasure of reviewing a session that reviewed a year that we will live through. We had 83% of the delay, 83% of the traffic reference to 2019, and we're not going to refer to 2019 again after the end of this meeting. We're going to make comparisons going forward against last year, 22. We highlighted through some of the overviews, the efforts made by the colleagues in the operations division, the NMOC and the airport unit, particularly in support of the network. And from the post-operations analysis, but also importantly, we listened to our stakeholders and we listened to you, and we tried the panel approach for hearing from our stakeholders, and that was really important. So we had the statistical overlook. We heard from the stakeholders around the lack of stability across all of the stakeholder groups, but raised initially from the airport area was a real issue in 2022. And that predictability across the network was variable, but the information that was shared through the rolling NOT process every week was very helpful and helped reduce, certainly in the shorter time, that unpredictability. We heard with a challenging question almost right at the end around how difficult it was to make improvements beyond where we already are as a network and as the stakeholders in the network with regard to sustainability. But taking that network approach with a fully collaborative agreement and approach across all the stakeholders was appreciated, especially in the year after the recovery from COVID pandemic. And that finally the efforts from across the whole of the network manager were appreciated, but that we indeed could and should do more in the future. At which point we had our lunch, and then it's back to you, Tony, for the review going forwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. We'll pause a few seconds to see if there is any further reaction to that. Yes, please.
Just one statement. As everybody know that over Poland we got a huge military activity, but together with network manager, together with our FMP staff, we are trying to minimize the restriction, the delays. Of course, we are not able to give you the shortest route of reduction on CO2, but we'll focus on delays. And of course, it also depends on our cooperation with military side. Thank you so much.
Thank you indeed. I don't need to respond as a statement, but it's a really good point as well. And I perhaps should have mentioned right at the start, the stakeholders were really clear in that first session that, you know what, we could look at it as a glass half empty, or we could look at it as a glass half full year. And I think that's a really important piece to just summarize the summary with. Thank you, Tony, back to you.
Thank you. The engineers will say that glass is not well designed. Right. Anything further to Stephen? Right. If not, I move to Răzvan to summarize the session too, please.
Thank you, Tony. In the session 2, we have looked together on the preparations of the summer 2023. And I would like to underline again that the result of what has been done until now comes from the work done by tens of thousands of people in the network manager. And this is the good thing, that we managed to partner together during very, very complex times and try to provide a better view and a better performance for the summer 2023. In one of the remarks that I had yesterday, during discussions was the delay forecast for the year 2023 in the previous edition of the network operations plan was 2.54 minutes per flight. Now it's 1.71 minutes per flight. What generated this good improvement? And I would say this good improvement was generated by the lot of work that has been done around the network in the meantime, and notably in the areas that I was mentioning yesterday: France, Germany, Greece, Cyprus, etc. Germany also a better plan than that we had before. So this is the result of all this good work. But the challenges, yesterday we have acknowledged the challenges of the summer 2023. It will be a very high traffic growth, up to 15%. It will be a less available airspace because we are missing a huge part of the airspace as a result of the Russian aggression in Ukraine. But at the same time, there will be more intense military activity. The more intense military activity will continue. So it will not only be this airspace where there is no access today, there will be other volumes of airspace that will require very thorough coordination, and we are really working on that. I'm very happy that the result of yesterday's discussion generated some exchanges over yesterday and today, and even better arrangements are being now put in place to prepare all this. So full acknowledgement and congratulations for the excellent work that that we all put together. Recalling that on the 23rd of February, we have the meeting on the preparation of the summer measures, that all the measures are fully supported by all the participants. And again, we have to note the excellent preparation of a large number of ANSPs and airports in this context of the summer 2023. So Tony, back to you, if there are any further questions on the summer part. You know what is good with the network operations plan? The summer always comes earlier to us, because when you make the 6 weeks outlook, you are already in the summer. We were just realizing now, actually we are getting now into the airline summer schedules. So summer is coming. So next week we will look into the airline summer schedule. So it's good news. Summer comes earlier, Christmas comes earlier. So it's always a good thing.
The floor is open for any further reactions. Seems that we're all looking for the summer season. I see none. I think, Răzvan, we move on to the next points.
In the session 3, we have discussed more strategic developments, but we wanted to make this very practical, and we were focusing on the good implementation of the network strategic projects, what has been done until now, and what is in the pipeline for quick delivery in the spring of 2023 with respect to the to improvements that were very much wanted by the community of the operational stakeholders, and I'm not going to go back to them, but they call for better air traffic flow management, improvements in flight efficiency support, etc. And this was very nicely complemented and confirmed through the presentation that we've heard this morning from our colleague Atice, who is our NM release program manager, not only release 27, she was the program manager of many other releases, and the exceptional work that has been done to achieve all these significant improvements and our compliance with CP1. We have introduced to you how we are going to work on the developments of the future network operational concepts, introduce the network operational concept, but also the fact that we are developing domains concepts for the 4D trajectory, ASM, ATFM, the data layer, and the fact that these concepts will also serve as future requirements for our INM system. At the end of yesterday, we have all acknowledged the big challenge that we have in front of us with the implementation of the FFIs by December 2025 in a very good and close partnership effort between the CESAR deployment manager and the network manager. And the fact that we will start discussing the possibility of putting in place implementation support initiative for FFIs, and that this will be discussed in a common session of the network directors of operations and of the network technical directors on 1st of March, and we will take it from there based on the decisions that will be made there. Back to you, Tony, if there are any questions.
Thank you, Răzvan. The floor is open. Any questions, comments, observations to Răzvan and the team? You must have, guys, did we put anything specific in the coffee and the food? And
remove something from the coffee.
So, right, then we move to the first session of today, which was on INM and NM's digital journey. You have seen an introduction first by Sil, the guy who is the INM program manager, laying the foundation. Then we've got the first golden nuggets of the last release, which is a huge release from Hatice. So we invite you there to go and see, because she, in a couple of slides, she could not have been given justice to all the developments. So I'll come back on the dates of the release 27. Then we have seen from Matis the way how we are finalizing the building, how fast and how nice we look. So we hope for sure we will operate from the next autumn in there. in de-risking the exercise with EASA, first moving with the legacy and then starting building the digital platform, digital products and the re-platforming of the crown jewelries, IFPS and ETFMS. So in the nutshell, we do this INM as part of the new normal to ensure digital transformation and remove the system obsolescence. You've seen the digital platform technical layer to enable developments, deployment, hosting, ops, and governance. And then Ralph Terrain, the business project manager, went through all the waves details. I'll just summarize wave one, initial IDL. And this IDL, we understand the integrated data layer. For us, all the aeronautical information being that, you know, the dynamic, the static, the EAD, the CACD is the initial part, because in wave one, we come with the EAD. And it's also, we are preparing for future integration with the CACD, but also for the early adopters, we bring digital NOTAM. In wave two, the partial IDL, further integration. The re-platform, very important to ensure that IFPS and ETFMS will be robust enough for the years to come. The dynamic network plan and crisis management and the NM UI. And then the future, wave three, beyond May 2025, the full integration on the integrated data layer. So we will have one single system. So by then, we will start forgetting a couple of acronyms like EAD and CACD. So airspace management, network performance with performance increase simulations and network impact. One integrated flight and flow, the future evolution of the NMUI and data services where we bring the machine learning and artificial intelligence. And I'm concluding for that session with significant milestones approaching. 27 April to 2nd of May this year, the last NM release. Of course, there were other important dates that Hatice mentioned when you start the operational testing, and you had links to the release notes and on all the details. 31st of October, the night from 30 to 31st of October 2023, the new ops center. By the way, by then we will have a name for that building. Actually, will be sooner than that. We are having a competition to the name of that building. Then 29th of November 2024, shadow operations for the INM, and from 15th of May 2025, start of operations with the first digital product of INM, the EAD. I stop here as a summary. Any last further opportunity to ask questions or comment on that? Yes, please, DFS.
Yes, we have a question or basically a comment. As the last NM release is 27.0 coming in spring this year. And based on the presentation you just reviewed, the first two waves will be basically just the transformation of the current platform to the new platform. We, especially as operators, are sometimes a little bit afraid that there will be no operational improvements during this time and just a data transfer. So those CRs which have been taken out of 25, 26 and 27 due to capacity, when can we expect those changes, especially in regard to ASM, flexible use of airspace and stuff like that, see in the new INM? So when do we see operational improvements instead of just having the platform transformed? When will be the first operational INM improvement?
We have big CRs on airspace management, flexible use of airspace already in release 27, which I think will cover the points that you just mentioned. But for after that, we have a 2 years freeze. So I think Răzvan, it calls the long stagnation, but we need that because if you allow me an allegoric parallel, metaphor is that we are trying to transform a 747-400 in a 777 new generation while we are flying from 4 engines to go on 2 modern engines, and we can't stop the machinery or we can't land. So it's very difficult to allow modifications when we need to freeze the baseline on which we will be transforming. So yeah, I'll give to Răzvan further on the specific CRs, which to me, I think we have them in the release 27.
Yeah, there is a significant number of changes for airspace management, for NConnect that will come in the release 27. By the way, the release notes for release 27 have just been published today. I've been through them last evening, approved, and they have been published today. So you will see all the details there. I would like more to refer to what I have said this morning. I think it was a question from one of our French colleagues about when all this is going to start. In the coming weeks, we will have a discussion about this transition period, and we will come back to you by when new developments will be possible to be done. I think the tricky thing in all this will be the nature of the developments. I think we might be a little bit more at ease doing some developments that do not have a back-end impact. That we will need to see. But there will be a 2 years freeze with no major functionalities developments, and we are in 2023. We hope that as from, I should rather say, probably the spring of 2026, we would be able again to have new developments. It's a 2 years period of transition, but you have to understand also that there is a period of defining the requirements, seeing exactly how the new system is. So most probably, as from 2026, some new functionalities will be possible to be implemented. But in the course of this year, we will come back to you on that. First of all, to start with the user interfaces, and that includes also the RAD that can connect and the further evolutions that could be done there. And we will try to bring this clarification. As I've said, also there is a request from a number of ANSP CEOs to start the development of new tools, new functionalities in support of the ANSPs, and this is why we want to bring this clarity very quickly, so that to continue the work, because first of all, we need your inputs in how the rest will be done. We have already a lot of that. The backlog that is there from the network strategic projects is sufficient for a 1 year of developments, I would say, Tony. So we are fine with that. The requirements are there. They have not been forgotten, and they will be put in with the first opportunity. But let's say, as from 2026, gradually we will start having new, more important functionalities coming in the system.
Yes, and to finalize on this, we need these new different technologies, and we hope after that we can have exponential developments, and whoever would like to have an idea and have access to the data, you develop a digital product that then you can put it on the platform. So, but before arriving to that stage, allow us to change the technologies and provide you the environment that allow us to do other interesting stuff.
And to be honest, Robert, some of the developments that we wanted to have and that are a little bit in the backlog, more we were remaining with the current system, more complex and more resources were required to find workarounds to implement them. With the new INM system, the speed of the development, first of all, the approach will be different, but also due to the new technology, the expectation is that the speed of development would be much, much better than what we had until now, because until now, the workarounds that we have to do in order to implement what you wanted to see there started to be quite significant. And I give you an example on some of the ASM developments, for instance. When we were looking together with our developers into it, and poor Adiche was always between the two forces, I would say. We were getting estimations between 50 to 100 man weeks for a change request, knowing that the total amount of development effort in a release was around 700 to 800 man weeks available for development. So if for one change request in a release, you are getting up to 100 man weeks effort of development, you can imagine that this was eating basically all the rest. And we could not continue like that. It would have been impossible. We would have reached a pure blockage very quickly. So it is the time to take a little bit of a breeze and then continue the work on making the requirements, on developing the requirements will not stop, and then implement them much faster than we could do it until now.
Thank you, Razvan. Thank you, Robert, for the question. Looking into the room. So, Paul, we move to the last session yours on the CNS infrastructure,
Yeah.
European ATM infrastructure.
Yeah, indeed.
Please.
Thank you, Tony. If there's one thing you will remember, I hope you will remember from our session, that it will have to be about data link. Yeah, data link provides true operational efficiency, safety, and other benefits, capacity. So please, let's all do whatever we can to further accelerate its uptake. I think through Nikos and Wizz Air's presentation, you saw that in more and more areas of Europe, it really starts to work. In the case of Wizz Air, it even starts to work for a complete fleet. And really, they're not one of the smallest airlines in Europe. So again, please do whatever you can to further benefit from data link. And we're at your full support for any question, any support that you may require on the topic. The rest of the session was basically to scare you. I think we succeeded at listening as well to the questions and the conversations during the lunch on this. The good news though about the scare is that we're all in this together. And I think we saw through the different presentations and as well through the external stakeholders, Jürgen from Skyguide and Eric, Skyguide from Skies, and Eric from Aéroport de Paris, that there is true competence in there. Yeah, it's engineering competence. Yeah, we go into the bits and the bytes, but there's true competence around in Europe to keep us safe. And I think what we need to do is work even more together to keep us safe also in the future. The 1030, 1090 problem, again, it's not likely to go away anytime soon, or we need to start switching off a couple of radars, and that will require some serious discussions amongst all of us together in Europe. The interference on GNSS and 5G, Gary, yeah, I remember, and 5G, yeah, is again a real one, again a very tricky one to solve, and we really hope that you took at heart our recommendation that you speak to your radio frequency people in your national countries, etc. Try to get further attention up to the level of ITU where possible. And again, we're here to help anybody on this journey. And then the last thing on cyber, you may not have understood everything, but what we do hope is that you've understood that the threat is real, and that again there are very competent people working on it, but we need much more. And one solution to this is the common procurement, but it's just one of many, many solutions. And please all take this cybersecurity threat very serious, because it is our full belief that one day or another, in a not too far away future, we're going to have a serious impact somewhere in European ATM. So please hope it's not going to happen, but when it happens, let's be ready for it and deal with it in the best possible way. That is, I think, it from our side.
Thank you, Paul. Floor is open for any last remark, comments, views. Back to Paul. Yes.
Yes, on the CPDLC topic, the feedback that we get from pilots on our side is that they, in most cases, still have to connect via voice as well to confirm that they are logged on CPDLC. Will this issue be solved, and how will this be solved? That's a big question.
Well, I think a lot of it is about starting to trust the system more. I think we come from for quite a long period of time, we couldn't fully trust it. The technical performance, the delays, the provider aborts, etc., created confusion in our heads whether we could fully trust it. I think it's really improving. Our monthly, weekly statistics are demonstrating this. And I think it is also a matter of just trying it out and really start using the system further. But I'm also referring to Nikos, who certainly would like to come in on this as well.
So thank you, Paul. So I think that's a very good message, and I mentioned the harmonization there. So this is where we need the input also from the pilot community to see what they need to change. But with this process of harmonizing the operations on the European side, to have the uniform experience for the pilot when it flies from the north to the south and east to west, that will be an opportunity to change all things that they are not really needed and can make detailing more efficient. So we can, that's a plea. We're having a detailing group meeting in March. The input of the airspace users is limited in these groups. So we really would like to see the information on the experience, the problems that the airspace users are having. So let's discuss, and in a month's time, being also in Brussels, that will not be very easy to travel maybe. So that can be something that we can come and bring your experience, your requests to the community.
Paul, thank you very much. Okay, I think that's it. We're at the end. I'm counting, you know, sometimes silence is good. Who is speaking first? Who is blinking first? So I will ask Clar and Pierre-Alexandre to put my slide back with the QR code before we pass the big thanks. First, I'll start thanking all of you for participation, for contributions, interactions, for the networking that is happening outside the sessions. And I think that's why we are giving ample time to the sessions and the breaks and the networking that happens behind the scenes. Because a part of you coming to see what happened, what's going to come, what are the changes, is to build bridges and connections. So as mentioned earlier on, by Monday lunchtime, and I'm looking carefully what I'm saying to Guido. So by lunchtime, you will receive an email with this QR code to give us the feedback. Just a handful of minutes from your life to tell us what you like, what you didn't like, what you want to keep, what you want to improve. By then we will clean the slides again, remove those that we cannot share and upload, except the one in the cybersecurity that we cannot share. Everything else will be available and uploaded. So you can download it. Will be in the same pages where the event has been advertised and you have had the agendas and so forth. So again, big thanks to all of you. Big thanks for keeping us repeating this event. We run it for many, many years. So, and as we said in the past, it was the last week of January, and where we are settling the the first week of February, not the last week of January. So next year we will publish soon the dates for the next year. Again, a big thanks. Again, big thanks to my fellow colleagues and their teams. There have been so many people. I mean, it looks so smooth and so easy, but there are many, many people. And with the risk of missing anyone in the EUROCONTROL team, I would like to mention a couple of names. First of all, from Pascal Corneli's team, we have two amazing gentlemen back in Regie, Pierre-Alexandre and Patrick. We'll make sure we run well. So, and the room, it's... is properly for us, and also that the fact that together with these two amazing young kids, I can tell them, it's this amazing young lady, Clark, who sits in the back there. So she makes sure, together with Luis, I think he's in the regie, together with Pierre-Alexandre and Patrick, that we can be broadcasting in social media. We have Zoom platform working, we have the YouTube, we have the LinkedIn. And then we've been all the DG comms, you know, with the registrations, Kyla Evans teams, Lucia, Vera, Jan, Hervé, Marianne, Rita, graphics designer, Livia, Nicolas, Anita, and so on. Our students who help with the badges, Steffi and Alessandro, and of course the user relations section led by Gaston, with John Paul, Henri, and of course the Deputy Master of Organization, Daria, will gradually take over from the real master of the ceremony. These events, it cannot happen without Guido. So thank you very much, guys. So that's it on behalf of Ken and myself. It's been a privilege to co-coordinate this event, and be safe, be well. Let's have thinking back at Jacopo's slide, let's be as much as we can on the left side to the exceptionally good for this summer. And be well, you and your families. See as many of you in the EUROCONTROL meetings, if not next year at the user forum. Thank you. The buses are 15:15 to the airport. So shuttle buses, exactly like planned. Thank you.